Chapter 1005. In the dormitory, Chen Guang and Lin Jingwei tied Bai Nyangzi up like a rice dumpling and dragged him to the toilet and poured cold water on him for a full 5 minutes before they finally subdued this idiot who was completely obsessed with sperm. Bai Nyangzi didn't understand why Chen Guang and Lin Jingwei were doing this. He felt that it was simply inexplicable. He thought to himself, of course I understand the principle of not deceiving a friend's wife. I'm not going to do bad things to Jiang Yage, I'm going to make a move on this handsome T who tried to steal Brother Guang's woman. What are you guys doing? Why the hell? You guys are very strange. Last semester, when everyone was watching the film together, didn't you guys have a good time in your own bed after you were done? Did you guys take the wrong medicine today? Poor Bai Fan shivered all over after being drenched in cold water. Then, he wailed and crawled into the bed, cursing, "Are you too crazy? If it wasn't for the fact that I can't beat you, I'd fight it out with you." Chen Guang and Lin Jingwei looked at each other and let out a long sigh of relief. No matter what, at least they prevented the most terrible thing from happening. At the thought of that scene, Bai Nyangzi looked at the photo of Chen Guang with blurred eyes and his body trembled violently. Then, really, goosebumps all over his body. Even the end of the world was nothing more than this. On the other side, Xiong'er had already gotten out of bed and was frantically searching for news on the internet. It's blown up, it's all blown up. On Weibo, in the forum, in Tiba, today's front page, Daily Morning Post, Penguin News. My God, it's flooded, it's completely flooded my brother. The second photo is out, and it's clearer than the first one. Motherf asterisk her, this lesbian sister is too much. She's obviously a girl and so beautiful. Even I think she's so handsome. No wonder Jiang Yage fell for it. The third photo is also out. Oh my God, her hand was on Jiang Yage's butt. Don't anyone pull me. I'm going to hack this damned woman to death. Chen Guang had no idea how he managed to resist the urge to strangle Xiong'er. Most probably, it was Lin Jingwei's crosslock that had taken effect. The first photo was posted about half an hour before he woke up. The second photo and the first photo were about 30 minutes apart. 5 minutes later, the third photo was posted. Obviously, the informant was very professional. First, they used the first picture to stir up the heat, and then used the title of Jiang Yage comes out of the closet in the morning to wake up the people who would care about this kind of entertainment super gossip from their sleep, so that more and more people would stay in front of their computers or mobile phones, waiting for the next news. 30 minutes was enough for a lot of the media people to wake up and enter combat mode. Although the first-hand information had been snatched away, they could still catch up with the hot topic and write their own comments. As for the gossipy onlookers, they could also wake up one by one. Then, they would wash their faces and sit on their way to work, refreshing the app over and over again, waiting for the next news. At this time, the second photo appeared. Just as people were digesting the shock brought by the second photo, the third one followed. These events were closely linked to each other, causing the impact of the entire incident to rapidly rise from nothing to the peak within an hour from 7 to 8 in the morning. The informant was also very particular about this time period. The previous scandals about Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue, even if they were fabricated and no one would believe them, would be quickly suppressed by the mysterious force. But between 7 to 8 in the morning, it was the last hour between the night shift and the morning shift. They didn't have enough manpower. Even if they reacted quickly, it was difficult for them to resist such explosive news. The second and third photos that followed would make the mysterious force even more exhausted. When the influence of this matter on the internet reached a climax, even if the mysterious power went all out during the day, it might not be able to suppress it easily. It would take at least 1 or 2 days for this news to disappear. By that time, the 3 photos would have been in the eyes of all the netizens, and their existence could no longer be covered up. Chen Guang couldn't stay in the dormitory anymore. He didn't need to look carefully to know how explosive this matter would be if it continued to ferment. Under the protection of the elders, Jiang Yage and Jin Shirue had always been good girls with a positive image. In the end, they came out of the closet. It was unknown how many people's eyeballs would explode. Chen Guang didn't need to think to know that Jiang Yage was being roared at by the bald old man at this moment. She was a bit of a scapegoat. In fact, she was innocent. I can guarantee with my integrity that there is absolutely no problem with her sexual orientation. At this time, it didn't matter who the informant was, what his purpose was, or who secretly took the photos and sent them to the informant yesterday. The most important thing now was how to deal with it and try to eliminate the influence of this matter so that Jiang Yage wouldn't be hurt too badly. In addition, he had to call her first. She dragged him into this mess, so he should comfort her. He had been calling her since he went downstairs, but when he was about to walk to the cafeteria, there was always a busy tone. He didn't need to think to know that the bald old man must be busy. Chen Guang stomped his feet. It was useless to be anxious, so he simply ordered 8 big meat buns and 3 bowls of porridge from the cafeteria and sat down to eat. However, he didn't have a peaceful breakfast. Almost every time he took a bite of a bun, he had to send away 1 or 2 people who recognized him. Unlike in the past, most of the boys and girls who came to chat with him today said the same thing. Chen Guang, I heard that you are friends with Jiang Yage. Is it true that she came out of the closet? These people asked while waving their phones, and the 3 photos were on the screen. What could Chen Guang say? All he could say was, no comment, I'm not sure, I'm watching the news, I can't get through, the line is busy, please don't ask me, let me eat first, okay? After finishing his breakfast with great difficulty, he fled from the cafeteria. He was also sweating profusely. In such a short time, everyone in the school was whispering to each other. Everyone knew that there were many places in the country that were exactly the same as the one in the school. Just as he was thinking about this, his phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was his father calling. Son. I heard that Jiang Yage came out of the closet. Is it true? That's impossible. Weren't you kept by her in the past? Why did she come out of the closet all of a sudden? Chen Guolei fired off a barrage of questions over the phone. Chen Guang did not expect his father to know. He sighed and said, Dad, it's not easy for me to explain this. Sigh. When Chen Guolei heard his lonely tone, he seemed to have guessed something. He stomped his feet and said, Hey. I understand now. Chen Guang was puzzled. What do you understand now, Dad? It's all my fault. What has it got to do with you? I told you that celebrities are hard to please. I told you to make up for it, but you didn't believe me. Now you know how powerful I am. What do I know now? Son, don't be discouraged. Although you may not be very satisfactory in that aspect, your face is still quite pleasing to look at. Don't be sad. There are plenty more fish in the sea. Oh yes, I'll make you another bowl of invincible rejuvenation soup. This time, you have to eat it obediently. Chen Guang finally understood. He understood everything. His father thought that he had squeezed Jiang Yage dry and could no longer satisfy her physical needs. That was why she changed her tastes and fell in love with women. If not for the fact that it was his own father on the other end, he would have scolded him. What the hell are you talking about? Your son has already made up for you into the best pile driver in history. Why are you still trying to make up for it? Thinking about how Sister Tang Ying was dragged into this pit, if I make up for it, I'll really have to change my name to Azura. Dad, just take a break. I'm begging you, okay? Forget it, I'm not talking to you anymore. I still have to make a call. Chen Guang hung up the phone as soon as he finished speaking. He was really afraid that he would go crazy from anger. He still couldn't get through to Jiang Yage's phone. Chen Guang had already jogged all the way to the parking lot. He was wondering if he should drive to the hotel where they had stayed the day before. Before he left, he scrolled through his phone again and was shocked by the new information that popped up on the screen. Why did she admit it so easily? Looking at Jiang Yage's newly updated Weibo, Chen Guang's mind was filled with a huge black question mark. Below her Weibo was a selfie. It was taken when she was about to remove her makeup yesterday. She put her head on his shoulder and showed off. She had censored the background of the women's restroom, but the big faces of Qin Yu and Jiang Yage were extremely clear in the camera. At that time, he was a little uncomfortable, so his expression was cold and reserved. However, Jiang Yage smiled very happily and sweetly. Above the photo, there was a very brief accompanying text. It was concise and comprehensive, and the meaning was clear. As everyone can see, yes, we are together. He looked at the time when the Weibo was updated. It was 30 seconds ago. Chen Guang refreshed the page again. In less than a minute, the number of comments below had already exceeded 5,000, and the number of forwards had already exceeded 8,000. Moreover, it was growing at a very frightening speed. Chen Guang's head was buzzing. He leaned back. What else could he say? How could he eliminate this influence? She had admitted it all. She had admitted in front of everyone in the world that she had come out of the closet. Big sister, you are really a little explosive. Back to last night. Jiang Yage and Jin Shirue returned to the hotel. Naturally, Jin Shirue couldn't avoid all kinds of questions. She asked her what was going on in her head, why did she suddenly change her mind, and what exactly did she think about Chen Guang and Qin Yu now? Let's not talk about the relationship between the two of them. You first fell in love with the younger brother, and then fell in love with the older sister. Isn't this causing conflict between the two of them? Jin Shirue was also persuading Jiang Yage, telling her to think clearly and tell her that there was no future between her and Qin Yu. Even if there were many people who liked Chen Guang, even if Chen Guang himself wasn't easy to deal with, it was better to continue pursuing him than to be with Qin Yu. At least Chen Guang could let you have a child, right? Jiang Yage had a guilty conscience in her heart. She dodged left and right, and was really tired of defending. The more Jin Shirue persuaded her, the more ashamed Jiang Yage felt. She wanted to open her mouth and admit it a few times, but the words jumped into her throat and she forcefully swallowed them back into her stomach. At that time, she only thought, I will wait one more day, just one more day. When Sister Shirue lets this matter go a little easier, I will think of a way and slowly tell her. Otherwise, I will trick Chen Guang over tomorrow and find the medicine to let the two of them cook a meal. There were many things that only required determination when making a decision, but when it came to implementing it, it required great courage. In the end, she managed to escape from Jin Shirue's encirclement. The two girls even slept in separate rooms for a night. Chapter 1006. Jiang Yage just wanted to delay it, but when she opened her eyes early in the morning, she was also caught off guard by the overwhelming news on the internet. Before she came to her senses, Grandpa's phone call came in. Old Jiang scolded her harshly. The old man was so angry that he finally accepted the idea of finding a way to let his granddaughter hook up with Chen Guang, but this obedient granddaughter actually came out of the closet. This was the biggest stain in old Jiang's life. This not only made him lose face, but also the prestige of the Jiang family. This was ridiculous. Old Jiang still scolded Jiang Yage as before. For so many years, he had been disciplining Jiang Yage in this way, so she had developed a character of being tough on the outside but soft on the inside. She looked careless, but in fact, she was very afraid of the control of her family, which was the other extreme of Jean Shiryue's family. Through the phone, Jiang Yage was also sprayed with saliva by old Jiang, and she felt very wronged. What do you know? You don't know anything. No matter what you say, I don't care what the relationship between Qin Yu and Qin Guang is. Anyway, you. Absolutely not. After scolding for a full half an hour, old Jiang panted heavily, put down this sentence, and then hung up the phone. Jiang Yage's eyes were full of tears. She felt so wronged. Jean Shiryue, who had been listening to the phone call outside the door for more than half an hour, came in, sighed, sat on the bed, and gently pinched Jiang Yage's hand. Yage, don't cry. You know your grandpa has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Otherwise, let's not mention this first. Maybe he will forget it after a while. I won't persuade you. If you really like Qin Yu, we can slowly think of a long-term plan. Jiang Yage gritted her teeth, looked up at Jean Shiryue, and bowed her head heavily. Sister Shiryue, I'm sorry. Jean Shiryue was stunned. Why are you apologizing to me? Jiang Yage picked up her phone and typed on Weibo while saying, I'll explain it to you after I finish posting this Weibo. As a result, the Weibo post that Qin Guang was reading now appeared in her personal Weibo account. Ever since she was young, Jiang Yage had always been obedient to her grandfather. Her father didn't interfere much. There could only be one overbearing person in the family. Old Jiang was enough to make everyone feel suffocated. Although Jiang Yuanchao was arrogant in front of outsiders, at home, he was still subdued by the old man. But this time, Jiang Yage didn't want to listen to her grandfather anymore. She even felt angry. Yes, Qin Yu was fake. She didn't exist. What I did with Qin Yu wasn't actually coming out of the closet, because she was Qin Guang. But what right do you have to control me? Even if I have to come out of the closet, it's my freedom. After being scolded by old Jiang on the phone for more than half an hour, Jiang Yage didn't feel guilty. Instead, she felt wronged and angry. Her psychological changes were extremely complicated. If the thing with Qin Yu was true, she might be afraid and really feel that she had lost the face of her family. Deep down, she knew that it was all fake, but she was still scolded by the old man. She could only hold it in and couldn't tell the truth, so of course, she became more and more angry. But she didn't dare to yell at the old man, so she could only listen to him on the phone. But the old man's voice was too loud, so she couldn't listen to him. When she hung up the phone, she thought about it again. The more she thought about it, the more wronged she felt. She was so angry that she posted the Weibo post. It was also the old man's fault for protecting Jiang Yage and Jean Shiryue too much in the past. The two girls' Weibo accounts were usually in their hands, and they didn't hand them over to the people in the company. Otherwise, this kind of emergency public relations thing should have been filtered by Sister Zhou first, and then discussed at a meeting to see how to deal with it. Few artists could use such a violent way to deal with the storm like Jiang Yage. Didn't you say that I came out of the closet? Then I admitted it. Then what? What do you want? Grandpa, didn't you scold me? Didn't you say that I absolutely couldn't do it? Now I've done it, and I admit it directly. Let's see what you can do to me. Jean Shiryue, who was sitting next to Jiang Yage, also held her mobile phone in her hand. She refreshed it and looked down, and her face changed. Yage, you're crazy. Didn't I say we should think about it in the long run? Delete it now. With that, Jean Shiryue rushed up to grab Jiang Yage's mobile phone. Jiang Yage hid the mobile phone behind her back. I won't delete it. I won't delete it. No. It must be deleted. Jean Shirue was really angry, and anxiously stamped her feet. What's wrong with you? Can't you be a little more mature? Let's not talk about your family. Later, you can slowly explain to your father and grandfather. You can always get over this hurdle. But what if Chen Guang saw it? What will you do? Are you really going to give up on him and be with his sister? Why are you so inconsiderate? Jiang Yage blankly looked at Jean Shirue, whose face was red with anxiety. She was stunned for a long time, and her nose became more and more sour. Of course, she understood what Jean Shirue was thinking. The opinions of other outsiders, and even the resistance from her family, were actually not the most important factors. Sister Shirue, she was afraid that she would lose Chen Guang. I really let Sister Shirue down. I lied to you for many years. I was too selfish. Once she realized this, the dissatisfaction and grievance in Jiang Yage's heart towards her grandfather disappeared in an instant. What was left was only shame and self-blame in front of Jean Shirue. Jean Shirue saw the tears in Jiang Yage's eyes, and thought that her words were too heavy. So she sighed again, softened her tone, and sat down next to Jiang Yage. She grabbed her hand with both hands and gently patted the back of her hand. Yage, I'm not blaming you. I just don't want you to regret it in the future. Don't look at Chen Guang's careless appearance, but in fact, boys nowadays are very possessive. Even if you are just hot-headed and betrayed him for a short time, or even if the object of your affection is a woman, his sister, he will definitely have a knot in his heart. No matter what, isn't he the one you've always liked? Jean Shirue gently persuaded. Jiang Yage finally couldn't hold it in anymore. She threw herself into Jean Shirue's arms and burst into tears. Sister Shirue, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was wrong, I was really wrong. Jean Shirue thought that her advice was effective and continued to pat Jiang Yage's back. Well, it's good that you know you're wrong. Be good, give me the phone, I'll help you delete it. Jiang Yage couldn't bear it anymore. She raised her head, her eyes were red, and her nose was running. Sister Shirue, actually, Chen Yu is Chen Guang. Jean Shirue's hand that was raised in the air suddenly froze. This. What? Jiang Yage sat up straight and grabbed Jean Shirue's hand. Should have told you earlier, I really didn't mean to hide this from you. Actually, when we met Chen Yu at Yan Jingzi Noir Club, I bumped into her in the ladies' washroom. She was removing her makeup at that time. She is Chen Guang. Jean Shirue's face was full of confusion, and her mind began to recall bits and pieces. When she first met Chen Yu, she felt that she was slightly familiar, but because of her impeccable manners, she gradually lost her suspicion. When they met again yesterday, she heard that Chen Yu was Chen Guang's sister, so she didn't have her guard up. But once she knew the result first, and then tried to deduce the process, Chen Yu would have more flaws. As for her manners, with Chen Guang's acting skills, it wasn't a problem at all. He was a master who could bring others into the film, and now he was only one trophy away from being the best actor. But Jean Shirue still didn't understand. I think it's too unbelievable. But it's the truth. Jean Shirue rubbed her forehead. Her mind was in a daze. But why? I can't figure it out. Why did he dress up as a woman? What's the benefit? Usually, he doesn't seem to have that kind of tendency, right? This was the most suspicious point she couldn't understand. Jiang Yage took a deep breath, and then said, he didn't explain this to me, and I wanted to ask him, but he didn't want to say. At that time, he also asked me to keep it a secret. I thought that I finally had something on him, and I was too happy, so I didn't think it was necessary to get to the bottom of it. But I think. Think what? Jiang Yage looked at Jean Shirue with a burning gaze. Didn't Brother Bai Hua like you in the past? I think that Chen Guang saw Brother Bai Hua as a love rival, and he actually liked you too much, and cared about you too much. So, he deliberately dressed up as Chen Yu, and used Lin Jingwei to get close to Brother Bai Hua, using this drastic method to get rid of his love rival. But I think that he probably didn't expect the effect to be so good, and then Brother Bai Hua completely lost control. In fact, I was the one who put on makeup for him yesterday, and he wanted to put an end to this matter once and for all. Jean Shiyue's breath stagnated, and she was completely confused. Her heart was extremely tangled. Rationally, she felt that Jiang Yage's speculation was too ridiculous, and too unrealistic. Chen Guang had never taken the initiative to express any feelings for her. But emotionally, she couldn't help but hope that what Jiang Yage said was true. Even if it was too cruel and unfair to Bai Hua, and even if it made Chen Guang seem quite despicable to achieve his goals by hook or by crook. But Jean Shiyue was subconsciously willing to accept his despicable actions, and she was even moved to the point that her heart stopped beating. Just like how she was the one who had evil intentions, but in the end, she pretended to be kind and helped Jiang Yage. Jean Shiyue couldn't deny it, but in fact, she was also selfish. I still feel that it's a bit unbelievable. This isn't a play. How could Chen Guang make such a sacrifice for me? How could he be so despicable? Jean Shiyue's heart was already shaken. Jiang Yage shook her head fiercely. You must not say that about him. People are really strange. Once they are driven by emotions, even the most upright person may do something that even they themselves can't believe. Just like me, and also like you, Sister Shiyue, don't you think so? Chapter 1007. Jean Shiyue looks back at Jiang Yage and remembers all kinds of concealment between herself and Solomon for a long time. She feels that Jiang Yage's words have a hidden meaning and a tacit understanding. In fact, everyone is very despicable, and there is really no reason to blame anyone. Sister Shiyue, I'm not talking about you. In fact, it's all my fault. I knew from a long time ago that the person Chen Guang likes is you, but I have been hiding it from you. It's me who is the third party, it's me who is intervening in your relationship, Alas, Solomon, don't say it, I'm not magnanimous either. No, I want to say it, I must say it. I've always felt that it's because he cares so much about you that he keeps you at arm's length. It's because he worries about personal gains and losses. It's just like how he treats me or other people. He's especially open-minded because he has no desires and fears nothing. Jean Shiyue is sweet in her heart when she hears Jiang Yage's words, but she also feels heartache for Jiang Yage. Yes, in fact, Chen Guang's acting skills have always been very good, and he really hides his feelings deeply. But Solomon also likes Chen Guang, even before her. She must be very sad to say this, right? Alas, Solomon, it's not your fault. You said it first, alas. The two poor women sympathize with each other again. In fact, if Jiang Yage and Jean Shiyue know the real reason why Chen Guang pretends to be Chen Yu, it's just that he is trapped by Lin Jingwei. In order to get back that limited edition Patek Philippe, they unknowingly make things like this today. I'm afraid that the two women will vomit blood until they have anemia. Thousands of mistakes, it's all the fault of fate. It's the fault of fate that leads to today's mistakes again and again. In addition to saying that fate makes fun of people, what else can they say? On the other end, Chen Guang's call finally came in. Jiang Yage looked at the caller ID and gestured to Jean Shiyue to keep quiet. Then, before Chen Guang could speak, she said, "Did you see the news?" When Chen Guang heard this, he felt strange. Why was her mental state better than he had imagined? She seemed to be very open-minded and relieved. This was illogical. Wait a minute, was she going to give up? That's not very good, is it? Chen Guang gritted his teeth. Yeah, I saw it. I saw your Weibo too. I didn't expect it to turn out like this. I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing to me? It's nothing. Jiang Yage was stubborn. Chen Guang asked, didn't your grandfather scold you? He said it. Sigh, who cares? He can't possibly arrest me and lock me up, right? Jiang Yage said casually. Obviously, she was also putting up a front in front of Chen Guang. Actually, when she said this, her heart skipped a beat. Not good. Not to mention, with her grandfather's temper, she might really be put under house arrest. Maybe, should, probably, not. She subconsciously repeated it again, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her tone. Forget it. If it really doesn't work, I'll go to Beijing to look for your grandfather immediately. They should still give me face. No. No need. There's really no need. Don't worry about this. I have a way. I can settle it. If it really doesn't work, I'll look for you again. If you get involved now, it will only get more and more troublesome. Jiang Yage said hurriedly. All right. Chen Guang nodded. He also didn't have a good solution. The current situation was completely out of his expectations. Hearing him let go, Jiang Yage secretly looked at Jin Shirihua and said tentatively, actually, I think this situation is not bad. Ah. How is it not bad? Think about it. I came out of the closet and got together with Qin Yu. What about you and Sister Shirihua? Although you said that you are not close, but in fact, everyone in and out of the circle still sees you as Sister Shirihua's fiancé. No matter what, it's more acceptable than two women sharing a husband, right? Chen Guang was instantly speechless. He wanted to say that he wasn't interested in Jin Shirihua, but he felt that it wasn't appropriate. Oh right, when you decided to pretend to be Qin Yu to seduce Brother Bai Hua, it was because of Sister Shirihua, right? Jiang Yage looked at Jin Shirihua and asked the most important question. Then she switched the phone to hands-free mode. Chen Guang didn't know that Jin Shirihua was right next to him and argued, what a joke. When did I take the initiative to seduce Brother Bai Hua? Don't disgust me. What else? Then you like women's clothing? No such thing. Then why did you do it? Why did you pretend to be Qin Yu and appear in front of Brother Bai Hua? And you even made him fall head over heels for you. What are you after? I can't figure it out even if I break my head. Chen Guang was speechless. If it was any other time, he would have hung up the phone. But today, Jiang Yage took the blame for him, and she wanted an answer. It would be too much if he didn't explain anything. But he really didn't have the face to tell her about the Patek Philippe incident. Now that he was a billionaire, how could he dress up as a woman for something worth $1 million and even make someone fall for him? It was ridiculous and shameful. Jiang Yage wouldn't believe it. He sighed. Forget it, let the old man tell another lie. Okay, I admit it. Yes, I heard that Bai Hua also likes Shirihua. At that time, I felt that I couldn't compare to him in any way, and my brain short-circuited. Liang Shanbua and Zhu Yingtai had seen too much of it, and I wanted to try it myself. But I was just joking. I didn't expect it to become so big. Sigh. Hey, don't be so stubborn. Okay, I know. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up first. Don't say anything on the internet. Just pretend that you don't know anything. It will be fine in a few days. I'll hang up first. Sister Zhou is knocking on the door. After Jiang Yage finished speaking, she hung up the phone and then blinked at the dumbfounded Jin Shirihua. Poodle, Sister Shirihua, did you hear that? The truth, there is only one. He really likes you. Jean Shuryua's body went limp as she sat on the chair. Her mind was filled with perplexity and sweetness, but at the same time, she also felt blame for Chen Guang. He really did it. In the end, Chen Guang didn't go to the city. Jiang Yage was right. He couldn't help much even if he went. When he returned to the dormitory, the storm on the internet was even more intense. Jiang Yage personally announced it. Even if it was just a message on Weibo, it was equivalent to a press conference. Of course, it added fuel to the fire. Chen Guang was exhausted. Many people who knew about his relationship with his right-hand men came to inquire about the situation. Even Gao Ye dragged Sun Xiaoxuan and Lin Jingwei out. They said it was a dinner party, but in fact, they wanted to gossip. Chen Guang and Lin Jingwei unified their statements and confirmed that Jiang Yage had come out of the closet. Gao Ye was happy for Sun Xiaoxuan. It was a good thing, a very good thing. A super strong competitor had fallen in love with her. What was this called? The evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear. In the afternoon, Chen Guang felt uneasy and thought that maybe he should call old Jiang. After all, they were acquaintances. He could be the peacemaker and ask old Jiang not to make things difficult for Jiang Yage. However, before he could make the call, the old man called him first. Chen Guang was at a loss. He found a secluded place and picked up the call suspiciously. You know what happened to Solomon, right? Old Jiang went straight to the point. Chen Guang thought, how can I not know? Ah, I know. Grandpa Jiang, don't be angry. She's young. She won't think like this after a while. Are you kidding me? She's crazy. Grandpa Jiang, don't be angry. I'm not in Yanjin. If something happens, I'm afraid. It was rare for Chen Guang to talk to old Jiang so politely. Ah, Chen Guang, you're a good guy. I haven't heard you being so polite for a long time. You're the top master in the world. I know how powerful you were when you dealt with Ouyang Tianqing and the others. You have your pride and arrogance. You're so polite today, which shows that you really care about Solomon and me, right? Chen Guang was puzzled. He didn't know why old Jiang suddenly said that. He felt that something was wrong. Yes, it's like this. Solomon is my friend, and Grandpa Jiang, you're also very kind to me. If it weren't for your and Grandpa Jin's help, I wouldn't be where I am today. I'll remember your kindness. It's good that you remember my kindness, but you have to help me this time. Ah. How? Old Jean and I have already taken Solomon and Shuiwei home. She was stubborn with me in the afternoon, and it seems that she can't get over this hurdle. Solomon is under house arrest. Yes, I'll lock her up for a while. Grandpa Jiang, this is not very good, right? Our movie has just finished shooting, and it's going to be the publicity period soon. We can't do it without her cooperation. I invested a lot of money in the movie. If the box office is not good, I'll lose everything. Chen Guang hurriedly said his difficulties, trying to save the country in a roundabout way. Old Jiang snorted. Of course I know, but I'm just putting on an act. Now there's only one solution. What? Arrange for your people and prepare to let your Tianguang group take over the agency of Solomon and Shuiwei. Ah. Humph. I've discussed with old Jean. The companies of the two girls, together with their own agency contracts, will be sold to you for 1 yuan. Why is that? No reason. Dare to come out of the closet. And like women. This is simply smearing the bottom of a pot on my face. I will never agree. But there's no need to give me their company, is there? Don't talk nonsense, aren't you very good at attracting girls? No, I'm very pure. There's no way you're pure. In short, I'll give you the sword, and you give me the advantage of being close to Solomon. From now on, the two girls are artists under Qin Guang's banner. I heard that their net worth is worth billions now, right? I'll give it to you for free. Don't be polite with me, no, this is my military order. If you want to get these billions for free, you have to get Solomon. At least you have to change her sexual orientation for me. Do you hear me? Qin Guang was completely dumbfounded, and there was a deep knot in his mind as big as the logo of Huaxia Unicom. What was going on here? Qin Guang didn't answer. Old Jiang thought he was reluctant, so he changed the subject and pretended to be miserable again. Little Chen, this old man rarely asks for help, but this time, I'm really panicking. You have to help me. Look at me, I'm already so old, but my precious granddaughter is dating a homosexual. Do you know how sad I feel? Can you do me this favor? Now I really don't know who else I can count on except you. Anyway, you have a good relationship with them, right? Now they don't have any other friends of the opposite sex. It's better for you than to let them date a homosexual, right? I'm old, don't let me die with regrets. Grandpa Jiang, I agree. Good. Then it's a deal. Now the two girls are struggling, but don't worry, we'll lock them up for a few more days. If they want to go out, they must sign the contract. There was a bang on the other side of old Jiang. Maybe he was so excited that he hit the table. Okay, it's a deal. Old Jiang was in a good mood. Little Chen, listen to me. The transfer contract we arranged is a full transfer. That is to say, the acting careers of Solomon and Shuriwa will all be in your hands in the future. You can do whatever you want. If she is really disobedient, you can even sleep with her. Don't worry, I'll support you. I'll hang up first. Wait for my good news. 3 days at the latest. After that, the old man hung up the phone. Qin Guang stood in the corner like a silly goose. He could probably imagine how much acting Jiang Yage would do at this moment. She may be resisting stubbornly, making a scene, but in fact, she should be almost crazy with joy in her heart. Qin Guang sympathized with old Jiang, who was fooled and thought everything was under his control. With such a good granddaughter, you are really miserable, bald grandpa. In short, I'm going to sleep with her. Chapter 1008. The next morning, the public opinion on the internet didn't stop. Instead, it became more and more intense. Master Jiang had already made his move, and the mainstream media no longer reported this matter. Jiang Yage's Weibo post was also deleted by someone behind the scenes. However, the netizens couldn't resist the enthusiasm of the netizens. Screenshots of Weibo were still circulating everywhere, and discussions were still in full swing in various forums, groups, and WeChat moments in real life. According to the current trend, it didn't matter how many posts were deleted or banned. There was no flashlight that could erase people's memories like in Men in Black. No matter how powerful the deletion method was, it wouldn't be able to erase the memories in people's heads. Unless there was another explosive news that could turn the world upside down, the influence of this matter could only be eliminated with time. Qin Guang got up early in the morning and went straight to the company's headquarters in the city. Recently, most of Tianguang Group's energy was focused on cooperating with the movie promotion of women. Since Qin Guang didn't have other arrangements, they couldn't be idle. Since the company took the majority of the investment in women, the box office of women was also the company's business. Anyway, they had nothing to do, and they couldn't just take their salary for nothing. Yu Hong also knew the principle of the workplace. They couldn't wait for the boss to arrange everything, and they had to learn to find their own things to do. Yu Hong, Fang Tianyu, Lu Xiaoyang, and Su Li all thought so. Therefore, the whole company hadn't been idle recently. Their lives were very fulfilling, and they didn't need to worry that one day the boss would suddenly ask them to pack up and leave. However, there was a new change yesterday. The well-deserved female lead of women, Jiang Yage, made a big news. The crew of women panicked, and the whole Tianguang group was also confused. There were precedents of using scandals to attract attention in the industry, but this kind of thing had never happened to Jiang Yage. The producers and the investors didn't have the guts to make fun of Jiang Yage, not to mention that we were the investors, but we didn't have such a thing in our plan. Then there was only one possibility. The news on the internet was all true. She really came out of the closet. No one knew whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. The smarter investors would definitely take advantage of the situation. No matter what, they would ride on this hot topic and do whatever they could to hype up the movie. For example, they could even make up a story that Jiang Yage and Qin Yu met each other during filming, and then spread some news, true or false, that Qin Yu had visited the set during the outdoor shooting. But the target was Jiang Yage. No matter how good the idea was, they couldn't do it casually. Everyone had a fierce heart, but they had to feel the stones to cross the river. Lu Xiaoyang tried to contact his right-hand man, Zhou Yun, but to no avail. Zhou Yun simply said that the two of them had been sent back to their families, and no one knew what was going on. Then Comrade Xiao Lu contacted Big Beard. Big Beard, who was busy with the post-production editing, also had a cute look on his face as his eyes welled up with tears. It wasn't easy for him to finally get rid of the two little princesses who were extremely difficult to please. He was just waiting for the finished film to be released and then he would be completely free. He didn't expect that just a few days after the filming was completed, there would be such a big scandal. Do you know how hard it is for me to live? Don't ask me what's going on. I have no idea why Solomon would suddenly come out of the closet. Didn't she have a good relationship with Chen Guang before? They were just short of rolling in the sheets in public. I don't know. I'm desperate. The bearded man bit the bullet and tried to call Jiang Yage to communicate, but no one answered. Later, Big Beard learned something from Zhou. He was so scared that he didn't throw his phone away. He decided to cut the film in seclusion. Even if the sky falls down, I don't know anything. It's none of my business. I'm just an old director who is serious about making movies. Although I have a big beard, it doesn't mean I'm brave enough to use Jiang Yage's scandal to hype up the movie. So, a whole day passed. Tianguang Group didn't take any measures no matter how itchy they were. They couldn't hype up the movie. As for covering up the limelight, there must be a mysterious force taking action. There was no need for Tianguang Group to pay out of their own pocket to do such a thing. However, everyone thought of their poor boss at the same time. Thinking about it, they felt sorry for him. In the beginning, he debuted as Jin Shiyue's fiancé. Not long after, he acted cool at the press conference and dumped her. Although Jin Shiyue later confessed on Weibo, it was all bark and no bite. Gradually, there was no news. Before the kissing scene was released, the two didn't have any new rumors. It seemed that they really broke up. Later on, there were vague rumors and signs that Jiang Yage seemed to be very close to the boss and had a very close relationship. Although it was inconceivable, our boss seemed to have the characteristics of flirting with women. He took a beautiful and talented director Chu to a world language conference. It wasn't surprising that his left and right hands were taken by him one after the other. But now, it seemed that our boss had been flirting with girls until his sexual orientation was twisted. The world's greatest tragedy was this. The boss who felt sorry for his girl was taken away by a girl for 3 seconds. Then, everyone acted like Director Deng and pretended that nothing had happened. Actually, Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu didn't feel sorry for him. In fact, they wanted to laugh. You deserve this. Retribution. Who told you to be so poor and arrogant? You failed miserably, like drawing water with a wicker basket. You had to grab both of them. Both of your hands slipped, right? I'll give you 2 words. You deserve it. Then, it's decided. From now on, we won't mention it again. But we have to be prepared. It's very likely that Jin Shuiyue and Jiang Yage won't be able to attend the promotional work. If it's only Ren Chong and Zhao Yueling, their status might not be enough. Xiaoliang, discuss this with the boss. I'm afraid that the boss has to attend personally to maintain the attention. Yu Hong waved his hand at the meeting. Lu Xiaoliang resisted the urge to laugh and said with a straight face, no problem. I'll go to the boss's school later. Then, the meeting is adjourned. Yu Hong waved his hand and rubbed his sore eyebrows. What a headache. After everyone left one after another, Lu Xiaoliang and Fang Tianyu looked at each other and smiled wickedly. Hee hee. Hee hee hee. Lu Xiaoliang, how tragic. Fang Tianyu, +1. What a shame. How sad. What a disgrace to men. The girl he got turned into a lesbian. If it were me, I would have hung myself. Old Fang, you are a sea turtle, but why do I always feel that you are one of us? The more I look at you, the more pleasing to the eye. Xiao Lu, I also find it strange. Logically speaking, you and I are not on the same level, but I think you regret not meeting me earlier. Lu Xiaoliang, a hero doesn't care about his background. Fang Tianyu nodded. A pervert who doesn't care about his background? You 2 bitches. Su Li suddenly poked his head in from outside and said in a sinister tone. 2 of the 4 kings of Tingguang Agency stared at him at the same time. Shut up. Su Li was still very calm. I'm going to complain to the boss and say that you 2 are taking pleasure in his misfortune. The 2 panicked. Old Su. Don't. Su Li paid no attention to the 2 of them, turning his head and walking out. The 2 quickly followed him out of the meeting room and saw Chen Guang and Yu Hong walking in side by side. Where are you going? Let's go back to the meeting room. Chen Guang waved his hand and went straight into the meeting room. Lu Xiaoliang and Fang Tianyu looked at each other and secretly gave Su Li a thumbs up. Brother, thank you for saving my life. He said he was going to complain to the boss, but he was actually reminding the 2 of them when he saw that the boss was here. Su Li rolled his eyes and looked at them as if they all owed him a big meal. After the 4 kings sat down, Chen Guang took a deep breath and said, I have an important announcement. Get ready as soon as possible. Jin Shuiyue and Jiang Yage's agency will be merged into Tingguang Agency, and the price will be 1 yuan. Yu Hong, what? Lu Xiaoliang, what? Fang Tianyu, damn. Su Li. Chen Guang looked at the 4 kings' shocked expressions and didn't know if he should be proud or sad. He raised his hand slightly and pressed it down. All right. Quiet down. You don't need to know the reason. Anyway, this is the decision, and I have no right to object. Lu Xiaoliang was the first to stand up. Boss, I'm invincible. Fang Tianyu was 1 step slower. I'm on my knees, boss. Yu Hong calmed down a little. Although our agency used to be called Tingguang Agency, we actually don't have any experience in managing artists. Su Li started counting on his fingers. If we suddenly merge into an agency with a market value of billions at 1 yuan, it will be very difficult to handle the accounting. Looking at Yu Hong, Chen Guang continued, Old Yu, I don't want the 2 of them to suffer too much of a loss even though their company said that it's only worth $1. What do you think about this matter? Yu Hong rubbed his temples and thought for about 5 minutes before saying carefully, their companies are actually very mature. We don't have any experience, but their people are very familiar with it. If we break up their companies and merge them into our agency, it will have a huge impact on the personnel structure of both sides. Why don't we just use their companies as the basic framework? We can even change their company's name to Tianguang Culture and then become a subsidiary company controlled by our headquarters. What do you think, boss? Chen Guang nodded. That's a good idea. But I heard that their companies originally had 2 artists under them, and they are also the controlling shareholders. Boss, didn't you discuss the specific shares with them? Chen Guang had a slight headache. Old Zhang's words were easy. Giving him 1 yuan was equivalent to giving him money for free, but he didn't feel at ease taking the money. But if he didn't have the controlling shares, old Zhang might not agree. He was afraid that he couldn't control Zhang Yage. My controlling shares must be more than 50%. How about you transfer your agency contract to the subsidiary of Tianguang Culture? Then you will have 60% of the shares, and they will each have 20% of the shares. Although your reputation is about the same as those two, I personally think that your potential personal brand value is still greater than theirs. This is fair to them, and they won't lose out. Chen Guang made the final decision. Okay, it's settled. Keep it a secret for now. When the dust settles in a few days, you can quickly hand over and announce the news to the public. And so, the matter was more or less settled. Until Chen Guang left in the afternoon, the 4 great generals felt like they were in a dream. Their boss's tricks were too deep. Just when everyone thought that he had finally broken up with his girlfriend, he suddenly took everything from her body to her money. How domineering, how scary, how shameless. 3 days later, when the news of Zhang Yage coming out of the closet reached its peak and began to gradually decline, another piece of heavy news came out and swept the internet at an even faster speed. Left and Right Hand had changed owners. No, Left and Right Hand had finally sold their bodies. No, in short, in the entire entertainment industry, Jin Shuyue and Zhang Yage, who had the most mysterious backgrounds and didn't need to rely on tycoons, had become artists under Chen Guang. With lightning speed, Tianguang Culture was established. This company was under Tianguang Group and mainly dealt with artist agency contracts. At the moment, there were only 3 signed artists, Chen Guang, Jin Shuyue, and Zhang Yage. Actually, everyone knew that it was the Left and Right Hand whose company had been swallowed up by Chen Guang. Although they didn't know how much money he had spent, based on the value of those two, even if Tianguang Group had received 1 billion yuan in cash from the Rising Sea Fund, it would still be impossible for them to swallow this big fish. This was like a snake swallowing an elephant. Chen Guang had picked up a huge bargain. He had become a winner in life just by lying down. He had gotten these 2 works continuously, but was only 20 years old. It was as if he had 2 money printing machines at home. Zhang Yage had just come out of the closet, but in the blink of an eye, she and Jin Shuyue had given her and her money to Chen Guang. The millions of people who were watching on the sidelines couldn't react in time. The explosive news came one after another. It was really tiring for us gossipers. There was too much gossip, and we couldn't digest it all. The world of the rich was really deep. Curse that be *tch named Chen Guang. Feeling the endless resentment coming from afar, Chen Guang looked numbly at Lin Jingwei, Xiong'er, and Bai Nyangzi, who were about to go berserk and strangle him to death. He spread his hands, his face full of helplessness. What could I do? I was just lying down, and a mountain of gold fell on my head. I even had to follow the unspoken rules. I had no choice. Don't look at me like that. I'm handsome and good-looking. My face is good, so my life is good. You're too shameless. You're worse than a beast. Lin Jingwei, I'm going to call my grandpa. I'm going to expose you. Lin Jingwei knew the most, and he was also very smart. He didn't even need Chen Guang to explain to him. He knew why Grandpa Jiang made this decision. He thought to himself, poor Grandpa Jiang, you really don't have to count on Brother Guang to save Solomon. You're clearly sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth. Chapter 1009. Chen Guang patted Lin Jingwei's shoulder, pulled him aside, and whispered in his ear, "Why don't you report me? Tell them that you asked me to disguise as Chen Yu." Lin Jingwei broke out in a cold sweat, and his heart turned cold. No way. Brother Guang, you want to die with me? Chen Guang grunted. You think about how to explain it to the old masters. Grandpa Jiang hasn't reacted yet, but I guess tonight, or tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, they will call you. But I'm guessing that they'll call you tonight or tomorrow or the day after tomorrow at the latest. Lin Jingwei suddenly became alert. The first time Chen Yu appeared in front of others was when he brought her to find Bai Hua. If the old masters wanted to investigate Chen Yu's background, they would definitely call him. Damn it. Brother Guang, teach me what to do. Beg me. I beg you. Don't mess with me. Fine, just say that she is my sister, and she took the initiative to find you. Alright, just say that she's my sister, and that she took the initiative to look for you. She's someone that even I don't dare to provoke. She's a person that's 10 times more cold-blooded than I am. Naturally, they wouldn't ask too much. She is someone that even I don't dare to provoke, and she is 10 times more cold-blooded than I am. Naturally, they won't ask any more questions. What do you mean? Chen Guang grinned, and patted Lin Jingwei's shoulder. Young man, don't forget that the person in front of you is the most powerful inner force martial artist in the world. What do you mean? If I were in the ancient times, I would be a dragon slayer, and the leader of the martial arts world. Have you ever seen anyone who dared to interrogate Dongfang Bubi? Lin Jingwei was stunned at first, and then suddenly realized, and then his face quickly turned pale. What? You learned the Sunflower Treasure Book? Get lost. Chen Guang covered his face and retreated. He really didn't want to admit that he had actually learned a similar Lotus book in the true martial world. However, at that time, Xiaoqin had already become a martial sage and was more cautious. He flipped to the last page and did not stupidly castrate himself. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Tianguang Brokerage had been very busy. They had finally absorbed Jin Zhang's company and conveniently moved the subsidiary company Tianguang Culture to Beijing. As for the personnel, there weren't too many changes. Tianguang Culture was still operated by the original person in charge of Jin Zhang's company. It was just that the company's equity had changed and Chen Guang's personal management contract had been added. In these 3 days, there were some undercurrents that were not known to outsiders in Sichuan province. The wealthy Xiang family had once again poked a hornet's nest. They were ruthlessly slapped to the ground by a big slap from the sky. Then, they were repeatedly rubbed. Dozens of members of the Xiang family, as well as many people and forces attached to the Xiang family, were all annihilated. Although there weren't many capital crimes, there were many cases of confiscation of property, sentencing, and pursuing of responsibility. Within a year, the Xiang family had lost 2 pillars, Xiang Guoming and Xiang Guorong. The losses could be said to be tragic. What was even more tragic was that when the wall was down, everyone would give it a push. The friends in the political, business, and military circles who were on good terms with the Xiang family all closed their doors at this critical moment. They cut themselves off from the outside world and paid no attention to the outside world. No matter how the Xiang family begged in a low voice and waved a tempting check, hoping for someone to say a good word for them, it was useless. No one dared to take their moves. When they were attacked, what the other party threw out was also a solid hammer. If they didn't investigate you, everything would be fine. But once they did, it would be a smear of blood on the wall. At that time, Su Lijing asked Xiang Guoming to find someone to take Chen Guang's life, and Xiang Yangming dared to talk nonsense in Lu Chao's club. It was precisely because the Xiang family had never been clean. Lu Chao was also quick-witted. Although he didn't need to meddle in the affairs of Bai Hua, he still reminded his good friends not to get involved in the Xiang family's matter. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. Lu Chao was in the limelight, and the matter was so big, so naturally, it quickly spread throughout the country. Bai Hua also didn't intend to keep a low profile. It was better for others to know their place, so he didn't have to resort to more tricks. In just a few days, the Xiang family had collapsed like a withered tree. Their foundation couldn't be said to be solid. In the beginning, they relied on the relationship between Xiang Guoming and Su Lijing to start their business. Naturally, this time, their foundation was greatly damaged, and there was no possibility of a comeback. No one would remember the desperate cries of the Xiang family. Today it's us, tomorrow it'll be you. Chen Guang didn't care too much about these things. He was more concerned about the other side. Lu Chao didn't have to spend much effort to uncover the waiter who secretly took photos and leaked the photos. According to Lu Chao's plan, he wanted this greedy and daring young man to break both his hands. However, before he made his move, he first called Chen Guang to ask for his opinion. When he received Lu Chao's call, Chen Guang was walking on the long bridge with Lin Jingwei and the others. They were planning to go to the first building for class. At first, he was very angry and almost wanted to kill this guy. But in the end, his heart softened. Lu Li said that he was kind-hearted, but he didn't admit it. He even said that he didn't even blink when he killed the broken world, Ouyang Tianqing, or the father and son of the Bao family. Then, Lu Li said that he was decisive at that time because, based on his morals and outlook on life, he believed that these people deserved to die more than once. But in fact, every time he wanted to kill someone, he would first involuntarily define the other party's personality in his heart. His reasoning was very simple. He would always divide people into three categories: those who must be killed, those who could be killed, and those who could not be killed. When he made his move, he didn't hesitate because the people he killed were those that he thought must be killed. But if the other party provoked you, if you felt that the other party did not deserve to die and that the other party did not deserve to die, you wouldn't hate them anymore. At that time, Chen Guang was still arguing with Lu Li. But when Lu Chao asked how he should deal with that person, Chen Guang hesitated for a few seconds and then asked Lu Chao to let him go. Although the things that guy did were a bit ridiculous, the result was not unacceptable. Instead, he got a big bargain. As for the person behind the scenes who posted the news online, Chen Guang had no clue at all. Not only him, but even the special department that had been instructed by Old Master Jiang had not been able to find out who the culprit was. The other party's anti-detection methods and hacking skills could be said to be terrifying. When they first bought the photos, they were very careful and moved at least 5 broilers across several major networks around the world. Later, the other party's method of releasing the news was also very secretive. They directly hacked the servers of the mainstream media and changed the data from the back end. The first one they used to spread the news was an account that originally belonged to Zhuo Wei. Now, the account was in Chen Guang's own hands, 8 weekly. This was the good thing about Chen Guang. Since I couldn't find out who it was, I didn't need to worry about it. It would save me a lot of energy. If it was someone who wanted to secretly mess with me, then he should be regretting it now. He had helped me a lot and allowed me to get a big bargain. He would probably do something else in the future. But it didn't matter. This time, I let you sneak up on me. It won't be so easy for you to hide so well next time. The more you do, the more you'll expose yourself. Sooner or later, you'll fall into my hands. Humph. At that time, whether you live or die will be decided based on your gender and appearance. Men, die. Women, ugly, die. Beautiful lady, will definitely become very good friends. The old man was just that honest. With this thought, Chen Guang happily returned to his school life. At least before Big Beard finished editing the film, he still had some free time. Recently, Jiang Yage's matter had become too big. The heated discussion about the movie Women and the play Thunderstorm had died down a lot. Chen Guang was very unhappy about this. Why are you guys worrying about nothing? Pay more attention to the meaningful things. You guys are not good for the box office and acting skills of my movie. Although he was unhappy, he couldn't do anything about it. Huaxia was a very traditional country. Although same-sex love was known by everyone, in the eyes of many traditional older generations, it was still a disgraceful thing. It was not something that could be shown in public. Throughout the Chinese entertainment industry, there weren't many celebrities who publicly admitted that they were different from ordinary people. Although many people knew that it wasn't an isolated case, but a widespread phenomenon in society, there were still very few people who dared to face it and be honest. Ordinary people couldn't accept it, let alone celebrities who were public figures. It was even rarer for A-list and A-list superstars above the B-list to publicly admit that they were the same sex. Jiang Yage, who had always appeared in front of the world as an obedient and sunny girl, suddenly came out of the closet, which shocked countless people. Tianguang Group suddenly swallowed an elephant, which completely shut down the minds of countless onlookers. Countless people were trying to figure out what was going on. But no one could find the answer. As for those who knew the inside story, they were secretly shocked by old Jiang's decisiveness. In order to pull back his granddaughter who had embarked on the evil path, old Jiang wanted Chen Guang, the most beautiful man in the world, to take action. Of course, they sympathized with old Jiang, but they couldn't tell him about it, not even behind his back. If it reached his ears, someone would be killed. The clamor in the outside world continued. Old Jiang was still furious, but in fact, insiders like Chen Guang and Jiang Yage had already calmed down. It didn't matter what outsiders thought. Even if the sky had fallen, as long as the days passed, even the craziest topic would subside one day. As long as old Jiang didn't explode with anger, everything would be fine. Chen Guang didn't stay completely idle while he was in class. He took the time to go to the Guangding General Administration. Although he was no longer the director, the General Administration still didn't guard against him and let him come and go. Even his director's office was left intact. Knowing that Chen Guang had finally returned to the bureau, Wu Miaowan, who stayed behind, ran over happily. She closed the office door and approached him with a smile. "Mr. Chrysanthemum, you're finally back. I thought you had abandoned me after using me." Chen Guang put his hand on her shoulder to stop her from jumping on him. "Save it. I have business." Seeing his serious expression, Wu Miaowan stopped teasing him. Instead, she took his cup and made him a cup of his favorite bamboo green tea. Chen Guang flipped over his desk. There was a thick stack of documents on it. It turned out to be the list of new martial arts beauties that he had just printed this morning. "I've already resigned. Why are you still giving me these things?" Wu Miaowan handed the cup to him. "This is my little sweetheart's idea. She said that you might want to come back at any time, so she put more things for you so that you can feel your presence when you come back." "What? Does she think that I'm still nostalgic for this little bit of power?" "Yes, yes, yes. We all know that you're pursuing the highest realm of martial arts and the ultimate boundary of magic, my great magician Chrysanthemum. Good that you know. By the way, where is Xe and Qin? Do you all know what I asked Dai Quan to tell you last time?" Chen Guang rubbed the cup with his hand. When he thought about the mutated giant wolf, he still felt a little worried. In fact, for the past few days, although he didn't return to the police station due to his pride, he was very concerned about this matter. He also secretly told Xuelin that if there was any movement, she must report to him as soon as possible. In addition, he had secretly obtained the extremely high authority to access the National Public Security Information System through Wushan. If there were any strange cases, he would be the first to know. He did not want to stir up the righteous Wu Tong, so he deliberately avoided talking to her. Chen Guang was very anxious. Even if he drained the earth elemental energy around him every 2 to 3 days, he could not stop the other types of elemental energy from becoming stronger along with the power of the Holy Grail. He knew that this matter was not over yet, but he could only watch helplessly. The cup was in his hand, and the power of the Holy Grail was constantly leaking out. It was useless to wrap it with more bags. Liuli still lived in the cup, and it contained the 3,000 worlds. As one of the 10 great artifacts of the endless divine realm, not even a Star Destroyer cannon could do anything to this cup. With his limited worldview and pitiful understanding of the endless divine realm, he could not imagine anything in this world that could break this cup. Of course, even if it really was broken, it might not be appropriate. According to Liuli, because he had activated the punishment realm twice, it was equivalent to poking a hole in the real universe. One of the 9 great special cups, the real world, was slowly merging with this universe with Earth as the boundary. Just one of the 3,000 worlds, the real world, could merge with the entire universe. Chen Guang was really afraid that after breaking the cup, all the power in the Holy Grail would be instantly released, and his universe would be completely gone. This was completely possible. Then, he would have to become an eternally wandering lonely soul in the infinite nothingness. Just thinking about that scene made him feel despair. He felt that he was really quite great. He was clearly still a college student, a cute undergraduate student, sitting here drinking bamboo leaf green, crossing his legs, shooting small movies, and running a small company. In fact, he was worried about the world and the safety of the entire universe. Even I feel that it is very strange. Aliens far away in the endless starry sky, you have to thank me. There is such a great master of the 3,000 worlds who is so worried about the fate of the entire universe. Other people rule a country like cooking a small dish, but I save the universe like making a pancake. There was simply no point. He would be scolded as a retard if he told others about it. Others could not see his anxiety, and he had no way to tell anyone about it. In front of others, he could only selectively ignore those things that he could not think of a solution to, and act like everything was normal. He had no choice. He could not be so nervous that he trembled in a corner every day. That would be useless. It was meaningless for him to be anxious and angry. He could not be like Monkey's son, who could pull a handful of hair from his thigh and throw it on the ground to make countless little Chen Guang appear, looking for mutated animals or mutants all over the world. He could only guard his own little territory and anxiously wait for the next news. If mutated monsters that ordinary people could not defeat really appeared, he would quickly think of a way to alert the Guangding General Headquarters to respond. If the military could handle the situation, he would leave it to the military. If the military could not handle the situation, he would leave it to the inner force warriors. If everyone could not handle it, he would personally take action. But he had been waiting for almost a whole month, and there was no news at all. It seemed that since the appearance of the mutated wolves last time, everything had returned to normal, and nothing had changed. If not for the power of the Holy Grail drilling in his nostrils, he would almost think that he was hallucinating, so he decided to personally come to the station to ask. Chapter 10:10. Dearest brought some people to Kainan province to investigate the situation. It'll probably be another 2 days before she returns. She went to see the wolf carcasses. That happened last month. Then something happened in Kainan province. Why didn't you tell me? Chen Guang stood up immediately. Wu Miaowan was taken aback by his sudden outburst. Don't be so anxious. It's not like it's confirmed information or something that hasn't been verified yet. We can't possibly let you, the #1 expert in the world, make a pointless trip, right? Chen Guang sat down again. That's true. Sigh. What exactly happened in Kainan province? It said that a particularly large pig appeared there. It's a bit similar to the wolves you slaughtered last time. Chen Guang became nervous again. Do you have any video data? Yes. Let me see. Wu Miaowan pounced in front of Chen Guang's computer. Here, verify your bureau chief account and see for yourself. There's something going on outside. I'll go out first. Alright, go ahead. Chen Guang clicked on it and saw that it was indeed a large pig. It was at least twice the size of an ordinary livestock. He frowned. However, from the photo, the pig did not show any signs of mastering elemental power despite its large size. However, Chen Guang did not dare to let his guard down. What if the elemental power in this giant pig was still in its infancy, or it had developed intelligence and learned to hide its strength? As he was thinking about that, Wu Miaowan, who had just gone out, came back with a strange look on her face. Dearest just sent me a video. Take a look at it, sir. Chen Guang took the phone and stared at it. Chen Guang, you're at the station. What a coincidence. I just arrived at Kainan province. Xan Qin was very happy to see Chen Guang all of a sudden. She said cheerfully while holding a large skewer in her hand. Her mouth was full of grease. When Chen Guang saw this, he felt relieved that everything was fine. He asked, Wu Miaowan told me about the giant pig. Let me take a look. Is there any sign of further growth? Unexpectedly, Xan Qin's expression changed abruptly when she heard this. She looked as if she found it difficult to speak. Chen Guang knitted his brows tightly, thinking that something must have happened. Something must have happened, but she just wanted to hide it from him. Don't worry, I'll be right there. Chen Guang was about to get up when Xan Qin hurriedly said, Don't come near me. Chen Guang walked briskly toward the door. Don't let your guard down. I can't fully grasp the strength of the mutated monsters right now. If they're weak, they might be no different from normal livestock, but I won't eliminate the possibility of them surpassing Skin Force martial artists. No. It's not like that. Take a look. On the other side of the video call, Xan Qin was anxious. She shouted and switched the phone to the rear camera, aiming at the other side. Here's the pig. That's all. Xan Qin's crisp voice could be heard. She was talking into the microphone as she quickly approached. What entered Chen Guang's sight was a huge barbecue rack. 7 or 8 people surrounded the barbecue rack, bustling about happily. The barbecue rack was filled to the brim with roasted pig trotters in soy sauce, fat 5 flowers, large ribs, crispy pork ribs. These treasures from the pig were piled up densely. Slightly further away, there were 2 or 3 people surrounding a big pot that was emitting smoke. They were probably still stirring the offal of the pig. Among these people, Chen Guang could name most of them. Almost all of them were martial artists employed by the General Directorate of Guangding. There was Taoist Song Song from the Plainclothes sect. The old Taoist was stroking his beard while happily fiddling with cumin. However, his mouth was full of sorrow as he muttered, It's a pity that this talented animal has become your meal. Dai Quan pointed at another brawny man. It's all Master Pan's fault. I told him to wait and see, but he rushed up and punched him. Boxing Tyrant Panda, who had been shot in the chest to protect Wu Miaowan, rubbed his head in embarrassment. It wasn't easy for me to recover from my injury and my hands were itching. The giant wolf that the chief dealt with was so powerful. I thought that this pig must not be simple either. I didn't expect this animal to be so weak. A farmer came up from the side. Uncle Pan, I've already said that my pig grew up slowly from a young age. No matter how strong it is, it's still just an ordinary pig. Unlike you, Uncle Pan, you were born a human and your fists are as heavy as a bulldozer. My poor little black fellow townsman, don't be sad. I'll add another 5,000 yuan. A pig for 25,000 yuan. Its life as a pig is worth it. The fellow townsman immediately smiled and did not say anything else. Chen Guang, so you guys just turned that pig into a barbecue festival. Enchanting switched back to the front camera to face herself. That. Did you see? When we arrived this morning, sect leader Dai and Master Pan were talking about the giant wolves that you dealt with. Master Pan's heart was itching when he heard that. He saw the pig rush up and punch it. We couldn't even stop it and had to pay 20,000 yuan to settle the fellow townsman down. We thought that since we've already bought the pig, why don't we just barbecue it? We called all the townsmen here and estimated that it would take about 100 people to finish it. Chen Guang sighed. Fine, he had been nervous for nothing. Since the giant pig had grown to this size and could kill Panda in one hit, it obviously had nothing to do with elemental energy. Panda looked up and saw Enchanting on a video call. Deputy Chief, who are you talking to? Enchanting pointed the phone at Panda. Chief. Panda blushed and scratched his head. Ah. Chief, long time no see. I, Old Pan, have embarrassed you this time. Luckily, I was the one who killed the pigs in our fist faction when I was learning Kung Fu. I'm familiar with the process. Chief, should we bring some fat back for you? Chen Guang hurriedly waved his hand. No need. He chatted briefly with everyone and only ended the video call after a long time. It was obvious that the experts in the headquarters were very excited to see him again and were very respectful of him. Although he had resigned, these martial artists still only recognized him as the chief. Chen Guang's prestige in the headquarters came abruptly. It wasn't because of his virtue and prestige, nor was it because of his meticulous planning. It was rare for him to make a decision himself, but in the end, he still fell into someone else's trap. At least in the eyes of the people in the headquarters, the chief's intelligence could not be counted on. But none of this was important, because he fully deserved his unrivaled strength. This thing was even more valuable than aged wine, and it would never expire. A true powerhouse did not need to flaunt his martial arts all the time. Everyone knew that he had reached an unreachable height in martial arts. Even if he were to eat the amount of food for 10 people every day and sleep for 20 hours every day, turning himself into a fat man with a big belly for decades, he would still be the unsurpassable strongest martial artist in history. Many martial artists in the Guangding headquarters were still willing to stay in this special department with a clear conscience. Even if they accidentally killed the livestock of the farmers, they would immediately think of compensation and call their fellow villagers to hold a barbecue. This was the change that Chen Guang had brought to them. They realized that martial artists were actually human. Chen Guang's cultivation in the secular world and accumulation were both admirable and enviable. Unknowingly, these inner force martial artists, who were originally high and mighty, would subconsciously imitate Chen Guang's lifestyle. So far, they seemed to be doing quite well. They were even more ordinary than many of the privileged classes in this country that relied on money and power. Chen Guang himself did not feel this way. After all, he had only gone to the realm in the cup and became the strongest in history. No matter how profound his life experience in the realm of true martial was, no matter how strong his mentality as a powerhouse was, it had mostly dissipated after he successfully broke free from the Sage Emperor's mental state. Hey, I'm really going out now. Wu Miaowan blinked and looked at him. Why don't you take advantage of the time you have to do dual cultivation with me and teach me some skills? Chen Guang quickly sent her away. Go, go, go. Don't mess around. I'm busy. After sending Wu Miaowan away, Chen Guang put down the chair again. All kinds of thoughts popped up in his mind. It was a false alarm again. He had worried for nothing. Although this was a good thing, at least it proved that everything was fine, he could not relax. He rubbed his temples. This kind of anxiety that no one could talk about really made him feel physically and mentally exhausted. If he stretched his head out, he would be stabbed. He could not hide, but he did not know when the disaster would suddenly descend. This feeling was too unpleasant. He gripped the cup and thought to himself, this is really a torturous thing. Why don't you just give me a quick death and settle everything in one go? He took a deep breath and focused his eyes. His mind sank, and he entered the world in the cup once again. Many days had passed. Lu Li could not possibly still be clueless, could she? In the end, the moment Chen Guang entered, Lu Li, who was sitting in front of the computer and watching a television series with her legs crossed, suddenly threw a sentence at him. Don't ask me anything. I really don't know. Don't be like this. I'm so anxious that my hair is turning white. Lord Lu Li, please show me the way. Liu Li stood up, flicked her shoulder-length hair that had grown back, and straightened out her bikini feather dress. Why don't you give up? When have I ever lied to you? The world in the cup hasn't appeared for almost 2 months. Although the power of the Holy Grail outside can't be compared to the power of Mount Baylor during the punishment realm, it's obvious that this phenomenon is too abnormal. I'm on tenterhooks every day. Chen Guang tried his best to put on a very bitter expression. I see that you're living quite happily, aren't you? You're filming a movie, making money to do a variety show, and recently, I've even given you a windfall. You still have the cheek to say that you're on tenterhooks every day. Hearing those words, Chen Guang was shocked and asked, who leaked the news? How could a small matter like me setting up a subsidiary company reach the ears of a god? Lu Li turned around and silently pointed at the monitor. She switched to the web page. It was a bold and black title the size of a palm. Shocking. The king of internet influencers rises quickly, swallowing the 2 superstars on his left and right. Then she switched to another image. The strongest blockbuster in the history of the entertainment industry. After watching it, 1.3 billion Huaxia people are silent. Tianguang culture, the prehistoric behemoth that appeared out of nowhere. If you don't change, you're not a Huaxia person. Chen Guang, he had almost forgotten that Lu Li was quite trendy and kept up with the times. This kind of explosive news couldn't escape her eyes. Actually, you're not wrong. Your matter has indeed reached the ears of the 2 god emperors. In the endless heavenly realm, anyone below the god emperor level will be turned into ashes with just a few glances from Lu Ming and me. Isn't that especially good for you? Chen Guang nodded. It's quite an honor, but I'm still very concerned about what's happening outside. All right, just let Sister Lu Li go. Aren't you torturing the gods? Lu Ming, who had been watching the show from the side, finally couldn't help but interrupt. How about I tell you something else? Do you want to know where your money went? Chen Guang didn't know why Lu Ming was talking about such a senseless thing. Isn't my money in my pocket or in my bank card? No, I'm talking about the 170 million you earned by driving. Ha! Chen Guang was puzzled. Didn't Lu Li forbid him to ask? On the other side, Lu Li tried to interrupt Lu Ming, but Lu Ming said, Sister Lu Li, don't be so secretive. In a few days, even if you don't tell him, he'll find out. Didn't he make a fortune recently? It's just 170 million, it's nothing. Chen Guang was at a loss. He vaguely felt that something wasn't right. What are you guys talking about? Lu Ming's fruit shook even more violently. I'm saying, your money will be completely gone in a few days. But you don't care about this little bit of money, do you? What a scam. Chen Guang clutched his chest, rolled his eyes, and collapsed on his back. He didn't expect that before he could figure out the power of the Holy Grail, he would suddenly receive such a grievous news. It wasn't the first time that he had thought about 170 million. Even though he felt that the situation was getting worse and worse, he still held on to that 1 in a million hope. What if Luli was just pretending to be unreliable, and in fact, she really could use her Divine Emperor's mysterious divine sense of foresight to secretly invest in a big project for him? Maybe she was just joking with him. Just like 20 years ago, if you spent 100 million to buy Google stock, you would be worth more than 10 billion now. Maybe Luli did that. For example, in the past 6 months, the super popular shared bicycles, such as the MO by Bike, were very good at cheating people of money. He was a person who had to bend down to pick up a 50-cent note that fell to the ground, but he had taken away 170 million yuan for Luli. This money was not as easy as financing. It was the money he had won after risking his life on the Hong Kong Mid-Mountain racetrack and defeating countless top experts around the world. It's gone just like that. Isn't this stabbing my heart? He lay motionless on the ground. After a long while, he shook his feet and stretched out his fingers to point at the sky. My money. Then he tilted his head and didn't want to move again. He looked as if he had died. Luli and Lu Ming stared at him blankly. Luli said, "Don't embarrass me. Money is just a worldly possession. You can earn it again if it's gone." Chen Guang raised his head and glared at Luli. "That's easy for you to say. You don't even know what this money means to me." Lu Ming was secretly disappointed. "Why didn't you melt it? You're melting like last time. What are you going to absorb?" On the other hand, Chen Guang suddenly stood up straight. His eyes full of fighting spirit, he stared at Luli. "Wait, you said there were still a few days left. Tell me what's going on. Can I still be saved?" Chapter 10-11. About half an hour later, Chen Guang sat in his car again, started the engine, turned the steering wheel, and drove straight to Tongshan City, south of Wujing City. Thinking of Liuli's confession just now, Chen Guang felt that he didn't have enough energy to complain. Originally, he at least thought that Liuli had thrown her money into the stock market or funds. Even if the ship sank, at least there would be some shares in her hands. Even if 170 million yuan had been sacrificed, at least there would be a corpse. Even if investing in the stock market was throwing money into the water, at least there would be bubbles. Now he finally knew why Liuli found it difficult to talk about it. Really, it was too shameful. What the dignified emperor financial butler did for the first time was simply a tragedy. She had broken the limit of Chen Guang's imagination. If it hadn't happened to him, Chen Guang really wouldn't have thought that there would be such a fraud in the world. What she had done might not have been as good as using all her money to book the account of the double color bowl. That way, she could at least get back some money and win the first prize of 35 million yuan. Maybe the other party also found it unbelievable. How could there be such a fool in the world? While driving, Chen Guang touched his face. "I'm so sorry, this fool is me." About an hour and a half later, Chen Guang parked the car in front of a closed gate in the Tongshan Industrial Park. He opened the door and got out of the car. He quietly looked at the gilded nameplate in front of him, which was covered with dust because no one had taken care of it for a long time, as if he was looking at his 170 million yuan. Why are there tears in my eyes? Because I love my money so much. Only God knows my sorrow, because I was cheated by God. This is the corpse of my 170 million yuan. Chen Guang held the nameplate and looked at the words on it again. Then he stretched his neck and looked inside. It was desolate and deserted. He let out a long sigh again. Alas! Liuli's voice sounded in his heart. Don't be like this. Money is just a worldly possession. It's not something you can take with you when you're alive. It's fine if it's gone. I didn't cheat you on purpose. At that time, I really thought it was a good deal, so I did it directly. I didn't expect the Earthlings to be so resourceful. Chen Guang didn't want to talk to her. Money was just a worldly possession, but the problem was that he was still alive, but the money was gone. And it wasn't his fault. You were the one who cheated me. How could I not be heartbroken? Tongshan Industrial Park Sewage Treatment Plant. This was the name of the company on Chen Guang's nameplate. About a few months ago, he was immersed in the joy of winning a car race and suddenly making a fortune. At the same time, he was busy doing live broadcasts, participating in the World Championship of Darts, creating Weibo, taking on endorsements, and all sorts of other things. Later, when he wanted to do something with his own money. Lin, he had time, she told him, said, and other things, said, she said, he was, she, and said. At that time, Chen Guang didn't know that it wasn't a surprise, but a shock. Even Chen Guang had no idea how she did it. Without him knowing, she managed to transfer so much money from his Swiss Black Gold card account. Later on, Chen Guang analyzed that Liuli might have controlled him to sleepwalk to sign the document after he fell into a deep sleep, or she might have used a hypnosis on him. In any case, the money was taken away by her without him knowing. Back then, Chen Guang's live stream was especially profitable, and he had sufficient traffic and advertising fees on Weibo. He was also rather confident in Liuli, so he didn't think too much about it. Later, with Tang Xiaokai's $20 million, Tianguang brokerage got on the right track, and he didn't need money. If it weren't for his obsession with his hard-earned money, which made him unable to forget the 170 million that Lu Li had moved away, he would have forgotten about this matter. Now, he finally knew that Liu Li had made a shocking deal in the venture capital market with 170 million. At that time, everyone in the venture capital market was stunned. They all thought that they were seeing things. The damned company, Summer Light Environmental Protection, was bought by someone. What kind of spirit was this? What kind of international humanitarian selflessness was this? It happened so suddenly that even the owner, Mr. Xia, didn't come back to his senses. Already in complete despair, he had only tried to post the company's information online, but he didn't expect it to be sold after only a few days. The other party was so rich that he didn't even show up in person during the whole transaction. Everything was handled by the staff of UBS. Both parties reached an agreement on the price at lightning speed. Mr. Xia originally called for 200 million, but the other party raised the price to 170 million and refused to increase it. Mr. Xia didn't dare to say anything and agreed. Then, it was a series of rapid signing of the contract, stock transaction, and transfer of the money. When 170 million was transferred into his account, Mr. Xia realized that he wasn't dreaming. Everything was real. He was a little puzzled. It wasn't that he hadn't seen nouveau riche investors before, but nouveau riche who didn't show up in person for such a large transaction and left it to an agent was really unprecedented. It wasn't until the contract was signed that he found out the other party's name. It was a little familiar, Chen Guang. Mr. Xia didn't know if this Chen Guang was the famous internet celebrity Chen Guang, but he didn't particularly care about it. It was probably someone with the same name. There were at least tens of thousands of people with this name in the country. Anyway, it didn't matter. The money was in his hands, and he was finally free. That was the most important thing. This Summerlight Environmental Protection was the environmental protection company that operated the Tangshan Industrial Park sewage treatment plant using the BOT model. BOT was the abbreviation of Build Operate Transfer, which literally meant Build Operate Transfer. This was the most commonly used model in the construction and operation of sewage treatment plants in China. The model was very simple. The local government would provide the construction land, and Summerlight Environmental Protection would invest in the construction of the Tangshan Industrial Park sewage treatment plant to support the industrial park. After the sewage treatment plant was built, Summerlight Environmental Protection would have the right to operate the plant for 20 years. Every year, they would collect an appropriate fee based on the sewage discharge of other enterprises in the industrial park. After 20 years, Summerlight Environmental Protection would transfer the sewage treatment plant to the local government for free. According to the contract signed 8 years ago, if the sewage treatment plant could operate steadily and orderly for 20 years, Summerlight Environmental Protection would not only be able to smoothly recoup all their investment, but they would also be able to earn more than 300% profit. At that time, Mr. Xia could be said to be full of ambition. He almost sold everything he had and pulled in countless investments, preparing to go all out in the environmental protection industry. But soon, the cruel reality hit him in the head. From the second month after the sewage treatment plant was built, it was as if he had fallen into an eternal nightmare. The discharge couldn't meet the standards. Because of the unreasonable selection of enterprises in the industrial park's investment system, the sewage discharge of the entire industrial park was unimaginably complicated and extremely difficult to deal with. For a whole 8 years, Mr. Xia thought of every possible way. From beginning to end, he had made no less than 10 technical modifications, but he still knelt down again and again under all kinds of super difficult sewage. Super high concentration organic matter, super high pH, super hard to degrade macromolecular chains, super high salinity, heavy metal electroplating wastewater, organic extraction of toxic wastewater. In short, the sewage in the entire industrial park, no matter how deceptive it was, there was not a single good one. Poor Mr. Xia, he was tormented for a whole 8 years. In these 8 years, he was reported more than 50 times, fined more than 70 times, and more than 10 technical modifications made the construction cost of the sewage treatment plant rise from the original 150 million to 380 million. Every month, after deducting the cost of the sewage treatment fee, it was simply not enough to pay for the fines and technical modifications. He begged Grandpa and Grandma, inviting famous doctors and experts everywhere. It was useless, it was all useless, he just couldn't reach the target. He was scolded as Tangshan City's cancer, he also felt wronged. But this was still not the saddest. After the fines, Tangshan City's local government also couldn't do anything to him, they could only use their last trump card and deduct his number of years. The original authorized operating period of 20 years was deducted to less than 10 years just like that. Mr. Xia felt wronged, but the country had its laws, and the family had its rules. He couldn't reach the target, he couldn't blame others. Especially in recent years, China has increasingly paid attention to environmental issues. He was listed as a model in the industry again and again because of committing crimes against the wind. In fact, after about 4 years of stubbornly resisting, he knew the crux of the problem. The original design of the sewage treatment station had a fundamental error. Since the sewage was abnormally complicated, then from the beginning, different water qualities should have been individually pre-treated, and the process should have been very refined. But to achieve this effect, it was not a little bit of technical modification can be completed, it was equivalent to the entire sewage treatment plant to be completely rebuilt. The cost of this was simply too high for him to bear. He also struggled for a long time, looking everywhere for investment, looking for 4 years, but to no avail. Finally, this year, he completely lost hope. As long as his number of years was deducted again, his operating period would completely come to an end. Tangshan City's government had even contacted the receiving unit in advance, known as the leading domestic water company, Tiansong Water Company. Only a large group like Tiansong Water Company, with strong technical strength and good capital operation, had the ability to take over this mess. The entire sewage treatment plant would be overturned and rebuilt on the basis of the original site, introducing more advanced technology, and returning Tangshan River to a clear spring. This was of course a great thing for Tangshan City, but to Mr. Xia, it meant that all his investments were wasted, plus he had countless debts that he could never pay off. Debts will always be debts, even if he went bankrupt. He wouldn't be pursued legally, but emotionally, those creditors wouldn't let him go. At that time, other than cutting his throat and hanging himself, he would have no other choice, only this way would he not implicate his family. Mr. Xia, who was at his wit's end, had the mentality of breaking a jar, and threw the letter of intent for the transfer of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection into the venture capital market. Of course, he wouldn't mention the terrible situation of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection in the Tangshan Industrial Park sewage treatment plant, only various kinds of beautification, various investments up to 400 million, and now because his children went abroad, he had to retreat to the second line, so he packaged it up and sold it. At first, because of this matter, he was laughed at by many people. You and your company's reputation is so bad, how can you sell it? Chapter 10-12. But he never expected that a sucker would come a few days later. Then there were all kinds of signatures and stamps, as if the other party was afraid that he would go back on his word. After another few days, 170 million in cash was transferred to his account. Boss Xia was so moved that his eyes were brimming with tears, and then he happily took the money to pay off his debts. After so many years of poor management, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection owed a lot of debts. Relying on this 170 million, not only did he pay off his debts, but he also left a few million in his pocket. He almost wanted to worship the name Qinguang like a living bodhisattva. Of course, it was not easy to transfer such a huge entity. The Tangshan city government was also inexplicably surprised by this inconceivable interference. Several parties worked together and spent a whole 2 months to complete the handover procedures. After the handover, Boss Xia wanted to pat his butt and leave, but he and dozens of employees in the sewage treatment station waited for a long time, but Boss Qin did not come. He was also very responsible. Even if it had nothing to do with him, he still stayed in the factory. He took a few technical backbones and ran to Gokyo University to find Professor Xu Lirong, a well-known expert in the country, to ask for help. He also wanted to help the last struggle of all his hard work. Before he knew it, another 2 months had passed. There was less than half a month left before the next national census, and the weir was still yellow with substandard wastewater. He also had no choice. Therefore, 7 days before Qinguang arrived here, he left the company's general manager the last 500,000 in cash and then quietly left. His last 500,000 was used to pay the general manager the wages of dozens of employees in the factory for nearly 3 months. When Qinguang arrived, everyone, including the guard, was gathered in the big conference room of the office building, waiting to get the severance pay, and then go home to find their mothers. Qinguang straightened his clothes and then walked inside with his head held high. No matter what, the money had already been spent here, and there were still 7 days before the next investigation team came to the factory. He had to do something. First of all, the old man, as the new boss, had to show his imposing manner. Even if he could only be the boss for another 7 days. On second thought, the construction of Rome only took 7 days. After all, he was the master of the heavenly Holy Grail who had 3,000 worlds. Maybe he could turn something rotten into something magical. Sigh, Lady Lioli, can I interview you? What kind of mentality did you have at that time to be able to cheat me like that? You said you're my father. Are you tired of living? Oh, no, no, no. How can you trick me like this? Don't be angry. I'm not mocking you. I just don't understand. Let's properly sum up our experiences and lessons. Only then can we learn from our mistakes. Dream on. Don't expect me to help you with your finances in the future. I'm relieved to hear that. When you wake up tomorrow morning, Tingguang Group won't be yours anymore. Lady Lazuli, I was wrong. It's good that you know you're wrong. Lioli's slightly smug voice rang out in Qinguang's mind. It was obvious that she was very satisfied with the treatment of not having to repent after doing something wrong, but she was really a little embarrassed. Sigh, forget it. I'll admit it. Back then, I watched some TV series and felt that this kind of thing was very simple. Then, I felt that the stock market was too slow, so I thought about whether I could directly buy a company for you. And then you chose Xiaoguang Environmental Protection. Lioli grunted. The news released by that surnamed Xia was really tempting. A company with a total investment of more than 400 million. Buying it for 170 million, it's really worth it. Then, I thought, anyway, didn't you study environmental protection in school? It's just right for your specialty. Qinguang's eyes were listless. Yeah, I really thank you for being so considerate. You didn't even know to ask around. A sewage plant that couldn't reach the target for a whole 8 years. Not to say that there won't be anyone like it in the future, but I feel that it's already unprecedented. Also, this plant was originally only worth that price with 20 years of operation rights. Now it's already been a tragedy for 8 years, and there's only half a year left. How could it be worth 170 million? I was too excited at that time and didn't investigate carefully. I'm sorry. Without entering the cup world, Qinguang already knew that Lioli's face must be as red as a monkey's butt. Isn't it written in his contract? Under normal operation, a year's profit can reach 40 to 50 million. I've investigated before. A company that can earn back its capital in 5 years is very powerful. That's all a scam. That's theoretically the most ideal situation that can be achieved. Alright. Actually, I also found out later, but that boss Xia had already returned almost all the money. Even if I wanted to collect it, I wouldn't be able to. Lioli was getting more and more embarrassed. I just don't understand. Since I'm the legal representative of the company, why didn't anyone inform me after so long? Actually, there is, it's just that you don't know. You just met with the representative of UBS a few days ago. When Lioli said that, Qinguang immediately understood. God knows how many times he had secretly sleepwalked for Lioli with his divine power over such a long time. He didn't even know how many times he had signed and how many phone calls he had received without knowing it. Qinguang showed his might again. No wonder I said that your divine power is always insufficient. It seems that you've completely lost in this mess. You can't do anything right, but you're good at spoiling things. Lioli's patience finally ran out. Why don't you try saying it again? I gave you some color, and you still want to open a dye shop. You want to go to heaven. I've been defeated by you, what do you want? You just said you wouldn't laugh at me. Qinguang decisively gave up. No, I'm just joking with you. He rubbed his eyes. There was sand in them, and his heart felt sour. Having to deal with this kind of god-emperor, he was really tired as the protagonist. Humph. At least you know what's good for you. Anyway, you still have 7 days. If you can't be saved, it's your fault. It has nothing to do with me. Yes, it's my fault. If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll let your whole family sleep on the streets tomorrow. Madame Lioli is wise, divine, beautiful, and may live for 10,000 years. Chen Guang didn't have any psychological burden when it came to flattering Lioli and making her happy. Even if he wanted to strangle her a second ago, as long as she was angry, Chen Guang could coax her into a treasure in minutes. Even if he knew that she was very deceitful and unreasonable, and even to the extent that in order to cover up her own failure, she wasted her divine power again and again on this kind of deceitful thing. She wanted her face so much that she made him suffer, but her fists were stronger, so she had the final say. Chen Guang felt that he was a civilized person and wouldn't argue with a violent maniac. With these messy thoughts, Chen Guang walked past the sewage treatment plant area. Feeling the rotting smell and depression, he went straight to the mottled walls of the office building. It felt like the wind was blowing and the water was cold. No matter what, I'm here. Wait for me to save you. My 170 million. Although his determination was very firm, his heart was cold. The sewage treatment plant area was too deserted. Not to mention people, not even a sparrow could be seen. It felt like a haunted house. It wasn't until he walked to the entrance of the office building that he faintly heard the sound of argument coming from inside. Chapter 10:13. I don't agree. We've been working here for 8 years. How can we be dismissed just like that? I've been here since the first day the plant was built. How can I leave just because you say so? Manager Gua, you have to give us an explanation. That's right. Even if Tiansong Water takes over the plant, doesn't Tiansong Water still need people? Manager Gua, please help us talk to Tiansong Water. We're all experienced workers. It's better to use us than to hire new people, right? That's right. Our plant will be taken back by the government sooner or later. We're still a state-owned enterprise. They can't just dismiss us like that, can they? Before Chen Guang even took 2 steps inside, he heard a commotion coming from inside. Obviously, these employees of the Tongshan Industrial Park wastewater treatment plant who were about to be liquidated were not willing to be dismissed just like that. To put it nicely, they had feelings for the plant. To put it bluntly, these people had worked in a wastewater treatment plant that had not been up to standard for 8 years. They might have a lot of work experience, but in the eyes of others, it was all experience of substandard operation. Today, they were dismissed. It would be difficult for them to find a job in the same industry in the future. Everyone knew Tiansong Water's ability. When Boss Xia was here, the treatment was substandard. However, when the owner changed and the wastewater treatment plant was completely renovated, the plant came back to life and could operate stably. Then, the jobs at the Tongshan Industrial Park wastewater treatment plant would become an iron rice bowl that would never change. However, Chen Guang felt that the employees were overthinking it. The Tiansong Water Works wasn't a small enterprise, but a massive water company that spanned across the country. It had its own mature hiring system, especially for middle-level management and above. It was even more impossible for them to continue using the employees of the Summerlight Environmental Protection, who could be said to be failures among failures. Of course, from a bystander's point of view, Chen Guang could also understand their feelings. But as for whether they could stay or not, it depended on their ability. Just as he was about to hurry inside, he heard a familiar middle-aged man's deep voice. Quiet. Everyone be quiet. Don't be agitated. Listen to me. Regarding everyone's arrangements, Boss Xia had already asked the people from Tiansong. Tiansong also had their own rules. Even if they still wanted to hire us, they would have to wait for the industrial factory to stop working first. Then, everyone would come and hire us one by one. What's the use of arguing with me now? Manager Gua, don't try to fool us. I'm afraid you've already discussed it with them, right? That's right. He only cares about himself. He's too selfish. Also, according to the laws and regulations, even if we are to be dismissed, we can't just pay 3 months' salary, we still have to give N+1 severance pay. Manager Gua, ask Xia to come back and give us an explanation. Bang! The sound of someone slamming the table came from inside, and then Manager Gua's voice came again. Are you done? After this roar, the conference room finally quieted down. Chen Guang was not in a hurry to go in. He already knew who was inside and was pleasantly surprised. He did not expect to meet an old acquaintance here. Now, he wanted to see how this old acquaintance of his planned to deal with the situation in front of him. After waiting for about 10 seconds, Manager Gua sighed heavily. Sigh, it's not like you don't know about Boss Xiao's situation. He almost lost all his money just to run this factory. Now, he finally found a sucker to take the blame. Back then, Boss Xia spent tens of millions of his net worth here. Before he left, he still thought of leaving us $500,000 as compensation. Isn't that very benevolent? Also, don't say that I'm colluding with Tian Song. I want to, but they don't like me. When it's time to rehire, you guys at least have a chance to stay. I, Guoming, will definitely have to pack up and leave. Only I'm so easy to talk to. If it was someone unreasonable, forget about compensating you guys, would take the money and run. N+1. I don't even have a single cent. Our Xiaoguang environmental protection may look like a transfer, but in fact, it's no different from bankruptcy liquidation. Do you know what bankruptcy liquidation is? Even if you don't pay the money you owe the bank, save your severance pay. Alright, I'll call your names to come up and get the money. Take the money and leave. If you think it's too little and don't want to take it, then fine, I'll just put it in my bag. After being yelled at by Guoming, the people below were much more obedient. Lu Tao, 3 months of compensation, a total of 9,300, count it yourself. Guoming immediately began to count the money. When he took out the money, he sighed again. Sigh, the factory has become like this. Boss Xia has also done his best. Do your best and leave it to fate. Xiao Lu, you're a good lad. You're the vanguard of our mechanical repair class. It won't be difficult for you to find a factory after you leave. Xiao Lu choked and said, Thank you, Manager Gua. What are you thanking me for? This money was given by the owner of our factory. If you want to thank someone, thank that sucker. Chen Guang, who was outside the door, covered his heart with his hand. As the sucker himself, he felt an inexplicable sadness. Oh right, Manager Gua, what do you think is going on with our owner? He spent so much money to buy our factory, but in the end, he didn't come to take it over. What is he thinking? Is he just going to watch all this money go down the drain? Guoming, who knows? Maybe after he bought our factory, he realized that there's nothing he can do. Out of sight, out of mind. Or maybe he's stupid. Maybe. Or maybe he's too rich and doesn't care about this little bit of money. Alright, Xiao Lu, after you get the money, get out of the way. There are still so many people behind you. Anyway, a sucker is a sucker. Even if he's regretting it now, it doesn't matter. Even if he's our new boss now, he can only be here for a few days. The people from the inspection team will come next week. You guys can leave easily, but I still have to stay with Worker Yang and the others to guard the last shift. I'm guessing that I'll be scolded badly by others. Manager Gua, I want to leave too. A hoarse and deep voice of a middle-aged man came from the side. Old Yang, don't mess around. You're our head worker. We can't even meet the standards. If you leave, what if something happens this week? That old Yang sighed. what else can happen? It's already so rotten. It doesn't matter if I stay here or not. The earlier I leave, the earlier I can go to Wujing to find my son. I can ask him to find me a job as a security guard. Sigh. This head worker called Old Yang was quite pitiful. From the head worker of the sewage treatment plant to a security guard, the difference was quite big. But with his reputation in this industry, being the head worker of a sewage treatment plant that didn't meet the standards for 8 years, it was a joke. You can find a job as a security guard anytime. Don't be in a rush. I can't give you the money today. I'll give you the money next week after the inspection team leaves. Manager Gua, don't force me. Are you giving me the money now? No. Hey Gua, stop being arrogant. You've only been here for less than half a year and you're already trying to act all high and mighty. I don't like you for a long time. Give me the money. The industrial plant hasn't been doing well for so many years. It's all because of you. Look at your attitude. What attitude can I have? Didn't I try my best? This broken plant is just like this. It's the same no matter who comes. Inside, worker Yang and Guoming were getting more and more rowdy. There was a loud bang, and suddenly there was a commotion inside. Don't. Old Yang, don't. Hold them back. Hold them back. Don't push. Old Gua, don't lower yourself to Old Yang's level. They started fighting. Chen Guang, who was eavesdropping outside, quickly stepped forward and pushed the door open. He used a bit more force and the meeting room door flipped over and hit the wall with a thunder-like bang. Guoming and worker Yang, who were fighting, stopped and turned to look at Chen Guang at the same time. The other employees in the meeting room also did the same, not knowing who this uninvited guest was. Guoming's eyes widened. Chen Guang. Of course, he remembered this student. Chen Guang looked at Guoming, whose hair was in a mess and whose face was covered in scratches. He scratched his head embarrassedly. Hello, Teacher Gua. That's right. This Guoming was the one who stood up for Chen Guang when he was dealing with Wang Ren. He testified in court and helped to contact Ling Qin. He was also Wang Ren's predecessor. Bang! While Guoming was still in a daze, Yang Gong regained his senses and threw a sneak attack on Guoming's face, causing him to see stars. Other people in the meeting room started to recognize Chen Guang, but Guoming and worker Yang were still fighting. It was an awkward moment and they didn't know what to do. Chen Guang walked up and pressed his hand on worker Yang's shoulder. The head worker's body went limp and he was lifted up by Chen Guang. Guoming didn't take the opportunity to fight back. He held his bleeding mouth and looked at Chen Guang awkwardly. Chen Guang, why are you here? Chen Guang sighed. Sigh. Guoming's eyes widened and he pointed at Chen Guang. Don't tell me, you, letting out another sigh. Chen Guang pointed at his face and replied, that's right. I'm the one that you're talking about, the one that's filled with regret. Hey! You're stupid. Guoming stomped his feet again. He was worried about his money. He knew that the person who took the blame was called Chen Guang, but he didn't see his ID number and only knew that it was his name. Plus, he had been paying attention to Chen Guang's news. He didn't think that the popular Chen Guang would be so bored as to buy the doomed Xia Guang environmental protection. He wouldn't believe that the two Chen Guang were the same person. After all, Chen Guang was a smart person in his heart back then, and he didn't seem to have a screw loose in his brain. Now, he had to believe it even if he didn't want to. The eyes of worker Yang, who was massaging Chen Guang, lit up. Boss Chen, it's good that you're here. You have to pay the severance fee, right? If not, we'll go to the Ministry of Manpower. Chen Guang turned around and glared at him. When did I say I'm going to pay the severance fee? What do you mean? Worker Yang struggled, and Chen Guang let him go. However, Chen Guang paid no attention to him. He walked to the podium and knocked on the table. Quiet. Quiet down. Chapter 10:14. There were quite a few employees in the conference room who knew Chen Guang. Whispers and word of mouth had already spread his background to those who didn't know. The identity of a superstar was quite useful at times. In addition, he easily subdued old Yang with one hand, which made him even more prestigious. When everyone calmed down again, Chen Guang grinned. I have a few things to announce. Looking at your expressions, you should know who I am. That's right, I'm the new boss of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection, and also the new boss of Tongshan Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant. I'm also the Chen Guang that you all know from TV. After saying this, Chen Guang habitually waited for the cheers below. He felt that his entrance was quite domineering. After all, his fame was not just for show. But after waiting for a long time, there was no movement. And then, finally, an employee asked. The slightly embarrassed Chen Guang coughed lightly. Then, today's meeting is adjourned. Everyone return to your respective positions. As for this company, I have no plans to dismiss it for the time being. How can that be? I've already discussed with the property management company in Wujing. Yang Gong was the first to make a fuss. With him taking the lead, there were another 20 to 30 employees who objected. That's right. Staying here is a waste of time anyway. Even if you're Chen Guang, it's useless. Boss Chen, don't tell me you still want to save this plant. Save your energy. Boss Xia has been struggling for 8 years. It's useless. Just be merciful and give us our severance pay. Let us go. That's right. N+1. Guoming came over from the side and whispered, Chen Guang, ignore their unreasonable pestering. There's no reason for them to ask you for money. Chen Guang nodded and slammed the table. Are you guys mistaken? I'm the boss. I haven't even said anything about dismissal, and you guys are helping me dissolve the company. If you want to leave, then you're resigning. Don't King talk about severance pay. Don't be so shameless. The audience was in an uproar. After all, they often saw Chen Guang on TV. They thought that he was a celebrity and should pay attention to his public image. They didn't expect Chen Guang to be so arrogant. Forget it, forget it. Pay me the last 3 months' salary and I'll leave now. Worker Yang came forward again. Chen Guang turned to look at him. Shut up. Sit down. Being stared at by him, Worker Yang's hair stood on end and he sat down in embarrassment. A burly man in the crowd was unconvinced. Chen Guang, don't think that you're so great just because you're a celebrity. Why are you being so arrogant? Boom. Chen Guang slammed his palm on the big table in the conference room in front of him, shattering it into pieces. Then, he looked at the man and said, whether I'm arrogant or not has nothing to do with whether I'm a celebrity or not. It has everything to do with my fists. What, you're not convinced? The man sat down on the floor. I'm convinced. If you're convinced, then don't make a fuss. Chen Guang pressed his hand down again. This time, everyone finally calmed down. I'll explain it simply. Since I'm here today, of course, I want to save the factory. After all, I spent a lot of money to buy it. As for why I bought it and whether I'm really a fool, I'm not interested in explaining it to you slowly. Those who want to leave today, I won't keep them. But those who feel that I can save the factory and are willing to stay, please stay. Chen Guang turned to Guoming and nodded. Teacher Gua, continue to pay. Those who want to leave, let them go. Worker Yang stood up again. Guoming wanted to keep him, but Chen Guang said, let him go. There's no use in keeping such a person. If he leaves now, he'll regret it in the future. Worker Yang took the money and walked out happily. He laughed and said, I won't regret it. Chen Guang said, wait another 5 minutes and you'll regret it. Impossible. Worker Yang decided to stay and see how Chen Guang was going to make him regret it. 5 minutes later, about half of the 60 employees in the factory came to collect their 3 months' salary and were ready to leave. The rest decided to stay. Maybe it was because of Chen Guang's celebrity status, or maybe they were fans of Almighty Superman. Those who were more familiar with him knew that up until now, Almighty Bro had never failed in anything he wanted to do. Although this factory has been rotten for 8 years and there are only 7 days left before the deadline, what if Lu Tao, who was the first to get the money, actually stayed? Chen Guang knew that this young man had feelings for the factory, so he stayed as long as he could. Chen Guang turned to look at Worker Yang, who was peeking out the window. He grinned meaningfully. All right, those who are willing to stay, in addition to 3 months' salary, I'll give you an extra 3 months' salary as a bonus. Regardless of whether we can pass the inspection next week, and regardless of whether this factory will belong to Xiaoguang Environmental Protection or Tiansong Water Company, this is the bonus I'll give you. Also, if we really mess things up and I can't save the factory, I'll give you N+1 severance pay. Everyone who stays will get a share. The moment he said that, $1 million was gone. Worker Yang's face turned green. D*MN, why didn't you say that earlier? It's just a few more days, and he'll have tens of thousands of yuan in his pocket. In a short 5 minutes, he immediately knew what he had missed out on. He really regretted it. Guoming muttered softly at the side, there's no need to waste so much money, right? Chen Guang shrugged nonchalantly. I've already wasted 170 million, why would I care about this million? I'm just happy. The old man was that rich and overbearing, that rich and willful. He wasn't done yet. He slammed the table again. Also, those who stay, do a good job. If the factory can be saved, we won't play N+1 anymore. I'll give you 2N. But he wasn't really hot-headed and just throwing money around. The situation was dire, and God had only left him 7 days. Although he didn't know what to do now, if he wanted the horse to run fast, he had to feed it, right? He would chase away half of the people he didn't like and double the workload for the rest of the people. He would first use money to motivate everyone so that when he came up with an idea, he would be able to drag everyone in the factory to work hard. As long as it was a problem that could be solved with money, it wasn't a problem. In order to save 170 million, what was the big deal about burning $1 million first? Most importantly, he had to make those who left regret it. He had to show them how rich he, Old Chin, was. I'm already here, but all of you want to throw in the towel and leave. If you don't even want to do your last shift properly, then you're not giving me face. If you don't give me face, then I won't let you be happy. If you're unhappy, then I'll be happy. This money was well spent. You gave old Shirley 170 million. Oh my God. On the other side, Guoming exclaimed. Obviously, he didn't know the exact amount of the transaction. He was only the general manager. Chen Guang shrugged. Yeah. Guoming couldn't help but say, are you stupid? Chen Guang wanted to say that he wasn't stupid, but some god was stupid. But he didn't dare to say it, so he could only admit it. Sigh, I'm stupid. I'm stupid because I shouldn't have trusted my Emperor God's butler. No matter what, it took him less than half an hour to stabilize the situation in the factory. Although half of the people left, there was still a chief engineer like Worker Yang and a middle-level engineer like the mechanic class monitor. But there were at least 30 people left, so there wasn't a lack of manpower. Chen Guang first bragged about saving the factory. He had to be imposing, but he actually didn't have any ideas. He could only take it one step at a time. When they finally settled down, Chen Guang immediately pulled Guoming to his office. On one hand, he wanted to understand the specific situation of the factory, and on the other hand, he wanted to know why Guoming was here. As far as he knew, Guoming used to be a manager in a trading company in Wujing City. About half an hour later, Chen Guang sighed. "Teacher Guo, you can tell me if you have any difficulties." Guoming waved his hand. "How can this be considered a difficulty? It's just a normal job transfer. It's not like I'm working for an iron rice bowl. It's normal to change jobs. Half a year ago, when I came to this factory, I was also full of ambition. I thought that if I could rely on the school's relationship and find more old experts, I might be able to save the factory. Who would have thought that even Professor Xu couldn't do anything about it? You can't say that. Back then, it was because of me that you had a hard time in your previous company, so you resigned. You don't have to come and mess with this mess. Teacher Guo, I can still trust you. If you come to my Tingguang group, I can arrange a job for you, right?" Guoming shook his head. "You're still talking about me. Didn't you also fall into this mess? I'm just a worker. If I just leave like that, aren't you worse off than me?" Chen Guang's face stiffened. Damn, he really couldn't refute that. Thinking about it carefully, he was the real tragedy. Furthermore, how can you say that it was your fault back then? Didn't you also help out when you saw injustice? Losing my job is a small matter. The important thing is that I can live with my conscience, right? Although I changed jobs because of this, my heart is at peace. I don't have to live tiredly anymore." Chen Guang nodded. "Teacher Guo, you're right. Also, I'm too prideful to ask you for help." Guoming changed the topic and chuckled. "But this time, Xiaoguang environmental protection won't drag your company down, right? It won't collapse. I'm super rich now. Then does your company need security? When can I go to work?" Chen Guang, "Teacher Guo, are you giving my Xiaoguang environmental protection a death sentence? Can't we save it together? Isn't it good to be alive? I still don't get it. How did you end up in this factory? Didn't I already say, don't ask about this?" As the two of them were chatting, Guoming's office door was suddenly pushed open. A big, fat girl walked in. "Teacher Guo, there's news that Chen Guang is here." "Yo, Chen Guang, long time no see." Chen Guang looked up and was slightly surprised. "Ha! Senior Hualing, why are you here?" Chapter 10-15. Suddenly meeting an old friend, Chen Guang was naturally very happy. Zhong Yu, a fellow student from Lilai County, also followed behind, and after meeting, they exchanged greetings. Hualing and Zhong Yu already knew that Chen Guang had been fooled, and they resisted making fun of him. Since Shui Jingxi left Gokyo University and went to the United States for further study, Chen Guang and Hualing and Zhong Yu have lost contact. On the one hand, he was too busy. On the other hand, although the two senior sisters were good people, they were not from the same world, and there were few places where they could intersect. However, even if they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Hualing and Zhong Yu obviously knew Chen Guang's movements very well. After some conversation, Chen Guang knew the cause and effect of the matter, and he had to sigh at the ingenuity of fate. It turned out that since Guoming came here as the general manager, he was still looking for ways to help Boss Xia. Guoming used his few connections and invited several well-known domestic experts and professors through Wujing University. However, after everyone came to see it one after another, almost all of them determined that Tangshan Industrial Factory was almost hopeless and could only be overthrown and restarted. Boss Xia was simply unable to bear the cost of reconstruction, and he didn't even have the 8 million yuan needed for ordinary technical transformation. Finally, after a big circle, Guoming finally had the cheek to find Professor Xu Lirong, who was almost retired. After Professor Xu came to see it in person, she had the same view as the previous experts and scholars. It's not that she didn't want to help, but she really didn't have the strength. Without money, no matter how good the show was, it couldn't be done. In the past, when Xiaoguang Environmental Protection was still rich, it spent 1 or 200 million yuan on technical transformation, but it didn't have any effect. Professor Xu also felt that Tangshan Industrial Factory was too old to go back, and her face was dead. But when she saw Guoming's pitiful appearance, she thought that after Zhua Jingxi left, Hualing and Zhongyu would not be able to adapt to changing to other laboratories, so she simply let the two of them come to Tangshan Industrial Factory to do experiments. Although Hualing and Zhongyu were only graduate students, they had been working with Zhua Jingxi for more than a year. In the projects led by Professor Xu, they had more or less achieved some results. In any case, conventional methods were already ineffective. It was better to let Hualing and Zhongyu try their luck with the new photocatalyst that was still being developed and verified here, hoping that a blind cat would run into a dead mouse. It was hard to say how effective it would be. Even if it was useful, it was unknown whether the current laboratory sample production capacity could support the industrial application in the Tangshan industrial plant. However, it was a last resort. He dealt with Guoming and gave him some comfort. At the same time, he could also help them complete their graduate thesis. Therefore, Hualing and Zhongyu had been living at the Tangshan Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant since the beginning of the semester. The two of them were just students who came here to do experiments. Naturally, they didn't need to participate in the staff meeting just now. Later, when they heard other employees in the factory mention Chen Guang, the two of them rushed over excitedly. After chatting about trivial things, Hualing remembered something important. Oh yeah, Manager Gua, this morning's water test report is out. How is it? Zhongyu picked up a piece of paper. It's still the same as before, it can't reach 3 standards. Chen Guang reached out from the side and looked down. Oh my god, the COD of the effluent is more than 700. This is the same as not treating it. The concentration of domestic wastewater is only 3 to 400, right? Hualing nodded. The treatment effect is quite poor. The comprehensive concentration of the effluent is less than 2000, and the pollutant removal rate is less than 70%. Huh, strange, you seem to know a lot about it. Chen Guang chuckled. How can I tell you guys? Back then, I went to the Cup realm to learn about environmental impact assessment and environmental politics for an exam. Not to mention, Chen Guang was really familiar with ordinary sewage treatment technology and policies and regulations. But he didn't expect to rely on his unconventional knowledge to turn something rotten into something magical. Environmental assessment was just a deformed product of the entire environmental protection science in response to the needs of the policy. No matter how proficient he was in environmental assessment, he couldn't even be considered to be proficient in the technical integration, research and development design, operation debugging, and even functional transformation of the specific sewage treatment station. So many well-known experts and scholars, including his own teachers, had failed here. Chen Guang wasn't arrogant enough to think that he was better than others in environmental assessment. His knowledge in this area was only learned through the most basic targeted training in the Jianling Tianyi Cup. It was all stuff that he memorized. He was really far from being an environmental scientist or a master of technology. But since he was already here, he had to go and take a look. He waved his hand. Okay, let's not talk anymore. Let's go around the factory and see the specific situation. Hua Ling, who was next to him, waved her hand. Hey, look at the situation now. This factory is doomed. What are you looking at? Zhong Yu, who was next to her, also nodded. That's right. I think you should hurry back to the 5 capitals. Otherwise, you can find your friends and find a way to sell Xiaoguang environmental protection as soon as possible. Then, you can find a scapegoat to pay the bill for you and get as much as you can. Guoming also muttered, Chen Guang, you haven't seen it yet. You don't know how bad the situation is. You looked very confident just now, thinking that the factory can still be saved. But listen to me, it's hopeless. It's really hopeless. Aren't you on good terms with the Rising Sea Fund? Hurry up and think of a way to let them take the blame for you. Chen Guang looked at the 3 of them silently. After all this time, they still sentenced Xiaoguang environmental protection to death in their minds. He silently cried, thinking, do you think I don't want to push the blame? But the problem is, where can I push the blame? Although there are a lot of idiots in the world breaker path, I can count the number of idiots who can take out more than 100 million with my fingers. Only Lori. Oh, no, only me, okay. Looking for Rao Xinghai from the Rising Sea Fund seemed like a solution, but Rao Xinghai had just scammed him not long ago. There was also the special factor of the compensation from the old masters for his resignation. Now, he had no reason and position to do favors. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to do it. Seeing his embarrassed expression, Hua Ling asked tentatively, you really can't find an idiot to take the blame? Chen Guang pointed at himself. The person standing in front of you is probably the last idiot on earth. Sigh. The 3 of them sighed in unison again. It was really a tragedy. Let's go. Let me take a look around first. All right. After walking out of the door, Chen Guang still felt unhappy. The 3 of them were the ones who watched the old man create a miracle. The old man felt very discouraged when he saw the 3 of them looking so dispirited. He decided to boost their morale a little. If I say that I feel that I can definitely save this factory, will you believe me? Guoming was shocked. Are you crazy? Don't tell me you want to use your own money to continue to fill a bottomless pit. Hua Ling, you want to rebuild the factory with your own money? Guoming, no. Absolutely not. Chen Guang, why haven't you thought about the possibility that you can handle the investigation in 7 days? Then Xiaoguang Environmental Protection will have a few months left. I remember there is a clause in the contract that as long as the factory continues to meet the emission standards in the next few months, the expiration date can slowly increase, right? Hua Ling rolled her eyes. Ha! Zhong Yu covered her mouth and snickered. The more daring you are, the more productive you are. Guoming, wake up. Chen Guang, wake up. You're not a magician. The wastewater that can't meet the target is right there. You can't just make it disappear with a whoosh. Don't tell me you're trying to pull some strings to get away with it. Guoming's eyes gradually lit up as he spoke. He knew that Chen Guang's status was different from the past. He might really be able to do something behind the scenes. But not long after, he shook his head dejectedly and muttered to himself, no, it won't work. The people from Tiansong have been here a few times already, and they are determined to get it. We are also famous for being rotten in the country. Doing something behind the scenes is equivalent to blinding the eyes of the whole world. The impact is too big. It is impossible for Tiansong water to not interfere. Besides, you can deceive them for a while, but you can't deceive them forever. Sigh, it's embarrassing to talk about it. Go back and take a look at Tongshan River and you'll understand. If I don't meet the target, I won't have the face to continue staying here. Chen Guang said angrily. Who said I'm going to do something behind the scenes? Hua Ling patted his shoulder from behind. Then don't talk nonsense. How are you going to deal with the inspection next week? Chen Guang announced that the morale-boosting plan had failed. Even he himself began to consider what kind of job to arrange for Guoming in Tianguang Group. When the four of them finally walked around the factory, he finally understood why Guoming and the others were so desperate. The situation was much more serious than he had imagined. The entire sewage treatment system was a tragedy. The entire process, from the process unit design to the tank structure, from the sewage retention time to the depth of aeration, were densely packed problems. None of them were reliable. For example, in sewage treatment, especially in the biochemical treatment of low to medium concentration wastewater, the aerobic aeration process was the core function group. The conventional aerobic tank body had to reach a depth of more than 3.5 meters. Once it was below this depth, the air that erupted from the aeration head would not have enough contact with the water body. The dissolved oxygen in the water body would not rise much, and it would directly escape from the water's surface in the form of bubbles. Then all the aerobic microorganisms would suffocate due to the lack of oxygen. In addition, because of the unreasonable design of the tank body, the capacity of the functional units was insufficient, which further led to the lack of retention time. The pollutant removal reaction time was too short, and the effluent still did not meet the target. However, the above situation was not the biggest problem of the entire Tongshan Industrial Park sewage treatment plant. The biggest drawback was still in the early stage of the classification and pre-treatment design. Chapter 10:16. The super-complex incoming water was directly mixed in the front grill without any separate pre-treatment, and then it was directly pumped into the anaerobic biochemical tank, causing the pH of the tank to be acidic. There were also antibiotic pollutants that could be used to kill bacteria, and because the incoming water contained high-salt wastewater from the pickle factory, it had a very high salinity. Biochemical treatment relied on microorganisms. The growth condition of anaerobic bacteria was a weak alkaline pH of about 9 to 10. After the comprehensive mixing, the wastewater had heavy metal ions and was weak acidic. There were also antibiotics that inhibited the growth of microorganisms, and the high salinity was almost sterilizing saline, which would also inhibit the growth of microorganisms. It was like a war between two armies. If the commander on one side poisoned his soldiers with arsenic, how could the war be fought? Although Chen Guang was only an undergraduate student, he had memorized the environmental impact assessment knowledge back then, so he could be considered proficient in this aspect. Along the way, he couldn't help being speechless as he sighed. Fuck, microorganisms that can reproduce under such conditions are practically cockroaches in the microorganism world. Microorganisms are even more precious than pandas, and I can count them with a single hand. How many of them can survive? So it would be weird if they could treat wastewater. Guoming and the other two really didn't expect Chen Guang to understand it at first glance. He didn't even need to explain and could see through the problem. He was so skilled that he didn't seem like a university student. Guoming nodded. Yes, we have already worked very hard to adjust the parameters and cultivate the specific bacteria. The biochemical treatment is still a little effective, but it is still a long way from reaching the standard. Look at this anaerobic tank. The real efficient tank water should be black, but what is this gray color? The anaerobic bacteria inside are all dead. Hey, look at this aerobic sedimentation tank. The mud is all black, and it's all floating on the water. It's dead, it's all dead. It stinks. There is no need to test the water. The feces are yellow. Just by looking at the color, you can tell it's not qualified. How dare they discharge this water? Aren't they afraid of being beaten to death? The person who designed this factory is really a genius. Hualing, huh? This is a genius. Yes, it's so rotten that no one has ever done it before. It can be said to destroy the world. Ordinary people can't do it, really can't. He didn't even die, so his survival ability must be super strong. Boss Xia is also a talent. He really dares to repair it. Guoming said, Mr. Xia doesn't understand technology. The previous design unit was appointed by the management committee of the scenic area. Chen Guang, the person in charge of the management committee, is also a talent. Has he been promoted? Guoming said, he went to prison a few years ago. I don't think he'll be out for another 10 or 20 years. Chen Guang said, just lock him up for the rest of his life. This kind of person will bring disaster to the country and the people if he is released. As Chen Guang walked, his comments made Guoming and the rest's eyes light up. They didn't expect him to not be putting on an act, but to be really knowledgeable. When he finally finished one round, Hualing looked him up and down in surprise. I can't tell, I really can't tell. Zhong Yu also nodded. I underestimated you. The three of them couldn't help but be surprised. Although they knew that Chen Guang majored in environmental science in university, looking at the abilities he had displayed in the past 6 months, especially his recently published Super Abnormal World's most complete foreign language teaching material, how could he have had the time to learn specialized courses? But now, the knowledge he displayed showed that not only did he learn, but he also understood it very well. Are you even human? Is your brain filled with a computer? Let's open your brain and see how many things are in it. Did you stuff a 10,000 terabytes SSD in it? Chen Guang couldn't help but feel smug as they looked at him with admiration. Of course. It's not that I want to brag, but if I was in charge of the environmental impact assessment of the factory, I would have improved the process from start to finish, and it wouldn't have been this bad. Zhong Yu clasped her hands together and looked at him with burning eyes. Do you have an idea now? What can we do to pass next week's inspection? Guoming and Hualing were also looking at Chen Guang. After all, Chen Guang had always been confident, and he had often created miracles in the past. He would always be able to grasp the crux of the journey, looking like someone that could be relied on. Chen Guang shook his head, took a deep breath, and grinned. No. Pfft. I'll go. Chen Guang scratched his head embarrassedly. Old Gua, didn't you say that I'm not a magician? I can't do anything about it. After searching the factory for a whole day, the group still had no clue. When the sky gradually turned dark, Chen Guang first brought the entire factory's 30 people to Tongshan City's Hotpot City to have a good meal. Even if he had no clue, he braced himself and cheered the remaining 30 people on. In the end, he almost believed it himself. The highest level of shamelessness was to lie to yourself. When the others returned to the factory, Chen Guang found a hotel in the city, signed a month's contract, and stayed there. Lying alone in the room, Chen Guang stood in front of the window and looked in the direction of the sewage station. There was no one around, and his heart was filled with infinite melancholy. He squeezed the heavenly Holy Grail in his hand. It seemed that it was time to rely on the Grail to save the world again. He counted the number of faith points he had saved up. It was close to 30 million units. It was enough for him to drink 4 times in the one-line heavenly cup. As the saying goes, raise an army for 1,000 days, use it for a moment. With so many faith points saved, why don't I give myself a heavenly Holy Grail that specializes in environmental science? 10 seconds later, Chen Guang let out a long sigh. No. How desperate. Walking into the heavenly Holy Grail, he realized that he had underestimated the difficulty and level of the environmental protection industry. Unlike other specialized disciplines, environmental science is a particularly large comprehensive discipline. It requires a deep understanding of industry, chemical principles, physics, chemistry, electrochemistry, microbiology, automation, economics, policies and regulations, and countless other subdisciplines. It is also necessary to integrate these deep knowledge into one's mind and form a system. For example, to design a sewage treatment plant for a chemical company, then first of all, one must know the overall process of the company like the back of one's hand. Knowing the characteristics of the quality and quantity of wastewater produced by the various sections of the company, then one can design a targeted classification and treatment process. Then, even if the source of the sewage is clear, in the actual treatment process, if you want to use electrolysis, then you must understand electrochemistry. If you want to use photocatalysis, sterilization, or molecular chain breaking processes, then you must also understand photochemistry. Entering the later sections, there are still a lot of problems. To flocculate sludge, you must understand chelates. To use oxidation ditch process, you must understand fluid mechanics. Finally, it is built and running, then you must domesticate microorganisms and understand microbiology. If you want to cultivate specific bacteria, you must also understand genetics. The complete environmental protection science was a super complicated subject that was formed by the integration of countless huge modern sciences. If it is just to design and operate an ordinary sewage treatment plant, even a fresh graduate can easily do it. But if you want to go further, only a long time of painstaking work and extraordinary understanding and logical thinking ability are left. Because of the huge and almost endless super-complex characteristics, it is easy to get started, but difficult to master. The difficulty is even higher than simple mathematicians, physicists, and economists. For example, Zhuo Jingxi's mentor, Xu Lirong. A few years ago, there was a large-scale sewage treatment plant in Sichuan province that used oxidation ditch process, but they encountered a big problem. The microorganisms in the oxidation ditch could not flocculate activated sludge, and it easily sank to the bottom of the water and became dead mud. Many experts in the country were found, but they could not find the reason. Later, Professor Xu was invited to help. Professor Xu walked around the factory, then took out a pen and paper and did some calculations. He arranged for someone to move the thruster in the middle of the oxidation ditch, which was originally 30 meters away, to 73 meters away. The problem was immediately solved. When the problem was solved, many people suddenly realized that it was so simple. Why did we not think of it in the beginning? But in reality, it was Professor Xu who first used the knowledge in his mind to make a perfect judgment of the entire wastewater treatment plant. Then, he was able to find the crux of the problem and calculate the time it took for the microorganisms in the oxidation ditch to naturally split in half an hour. Then, through a series of complex fluid mechanics calculations, he was able to come up with the most feasible technical modification plan. The final plan was the result of simplifying the complex, but the process of diagnosis and conceptualization before that was truly masterful. Without reaching that level, one would never understand the key. There was a thin layer of silk between understanding and not understanding, but many people could not pierce through this layer of silk even if they used their entire life's effort. This was the reason why this industry was always short of talented people. It was too difficult for a person to become a master in the environmental protection industry, and it required too much accumulation. In other industries, many real geniuses could come up with world-class results at the age of 30. As for the environmental protection industry, people at the age of 30 still haven't learned all kinds of basic subjects, let alone become a master. Environmental impact assessment was just the tip of the iceberg in this industry. It was a drop in the ocean, barely an entrance ticket. The evaluation results given to Chen Guang by the World in the Cup were as follows. If he wanted to become the strongest master in one go, he had to at least reach the third level of the World in the Cup. As for the one-line sky, Perhaps he could focus on training his ability in water pollution control. As for other aspects of knowledge such as waste gas, solid waste, ecological restoration, etc., there were also botany, meteorology, geophysics, and other abnormal subjects waiting for him. Oh yes, even if it was only industrial wastewater, there were also papermaking wastewater, synthetic chemical wastewater, extraction wastewater, mining wastewater, and hundreds of other wastewater systems with completely different water quality and quantity. Chen Guang said, "I choose to die." Even if he really burned these 30 million faith points to become the most powerful comprehensive industrial wastewater treatment master in history, it would be useless. No matter how powerful a master was, he couldn't turn the water in the pool into pure water in 7 days. At that time, the review team would take water samples from all sections of the entire Tangshan Industrial Park sewage treatment plant. It would be useless even if drugs were added in a certain section. "Lord Azure, do me a favor." "No way. This is just a trivial matter." "Lord Azure, take out some divine power from your crotch and it will be done in a few minutes. Give me a super powerful superhuman strain that can detoxify all pollutants in minutes." "Get lost. Do you think my divine power is cabbage? Do you know how exaggerated your request is? Isn't a strain a species? You want me to create a new creature for you. Do you know how difficult it is to create this? You want me to write code for you one by one from the DNA level. And it has to be able to grow enough for your entire sewage treatment plant. Why don't you just rob someone? Then directly make the pollutants disappear." "Hee, do you think that's realistic? Talking to a god about reality is not realistic. Go, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Anyway, my divine power is not enough." "How much divine power do I need?" "Enough to save your life 10,000 times." Chen Guang thought about it. 10,000 lives were more valuable. "Sigh, but you are the one who bought it." "Ouch. Ouch, 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 ouch." Coming out of the cup world with a swollen face, Chen Guang silently covered his heart. What the F***CK, what a scam. Could it be that I can only admit defeat? Admitting defeat would damage the old man's Taoist heart, and it would make the old man's thoughts unclear. Damn it, if I really can't do it, I'll really call the old man. I'll sell my old face and cover the sky with one hand for once to deal with the current investigation. Wait, it seems that there is no need to use the old man's relationship. Looking for Uncle Wishan or Secretary Ma should be enough for this period of time. Later, I'll completely rebuild it out of my own pocket. Earning more or less is one thing, but I can't admit defeat. With this idea in mind, he immediately went online to check the situation of this potential opponent, Tiansong Water Company. After all, the other party seemed to be determined to win. He knew the name of Tiansong Water Company, but he was not very clear about the background of this company. He didn't know if he didn't check, but after checking, he was even more furious. After all this time, the boss of Tiansong Water Company was an old acquaintance. A long time ago, Chen Guang was dragged by Tang Ying to watch the movie Tears Never End for Rivers and Mountains. He pretended to be her boyfriend, just to make a guy named Song Ningyuan give up. At that time, Tang Ying and Chen Guang had mentioned Tiansong Water Company, but he had forgotten about it after the incident. Now that he saw the words Song Ningyuan, the legal representative of Tiansong Water Company, the memory slowly emerged from the bottom of his heart. No wonder he didn't like this guy at that time. It turned out that they were fated to be incompatible. Chen Guang covered his face. Needless to say, if Song Ningyuan found out that he was the one who stole the operating rights of the Tangshan Industrial Park wastewater treatment plant from Chen Guang's hands, this guy would probably wake up laughing in his dreams after getting his revenge. I don't accept this. I can't let my enemy feel good. Chen Guang gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly. He suddenly had a stronger sense of mission to protect the wastewater treatment plant. Heaven never bars one's way, people can't be suffocated to death, there must be a way. This time, his obsession made Chen Guang unable to sleep for the entire night. He played games the whole night. Chapter 10:17. Fortunately, Chen Guang was a martial sage realm powerhouse. Even if he did not sleep for the whole night, his internal force would pass through his face for a while and there would not be dark circles under his eyes. At about 7:00 in the morning, he first called Lin Jingwei to wake up and pee, and then asked them to help him apply for a daily long leave from school. On the school's side, from the principal to Dean Han, there was no good way to deal with his school style of being a slacker. They had already greeted him and recorded his demerit, but he was popular and had a net worth of N billion yuan. He often did big projects that were worth hundreds of millions of yuan. He was willing to go back to school for classes when he was free. He could already be called an example among the current generation of star students. Then again, old Han also received a promise from Chen Guang. Regardless of how many classes Chen Guang skipped, Chen Guang's final exam results had to be presentable. As for his elective course, that was better to save it. It was said that the teachers of the School of Foreign Languages were almost worshipping his picture as a saint. If he wanted those who worshipped him like a god to deduct a point from him, it would probably be like holding a knife to their necks. However, old Han was still in a good mood, although he felt that it might be too black-bellied to think so. After all, it was very bad to gloat when others were unlucky. But he really could not help but be secretly happy. Chen Guang actually became the man who took over the sewage treatment station of Tongshan Industrial Park. Oh my God, just how blind is he? As the dean of the School of Architecture and Environment of Gokyo University, old Han used to be in charge of the Department of Environment. Although his status in the academic world was not as high as that of Professor Xu Lirong, it was not too far away. Previously, Guo Ming personally drove him there once, and then old Han sincerely patted Guo Ming on the shoulder on the spot. Xiao Guo, why don't you come back to school? Now that Su Lijing is gone, the school is also clear and bright. I will definitely not let you suffer anymore. Well, Guo Ming did not save the factory and almost got himself into trouble. Old man Han's low opinion of Xia Huanghan could be seen at a glance. It was 8:30 in the morning when Chen Guang arrived at the factory. Yesterday, he gave out the money, through a verbal check, and took the remaining 30 or so people to eat a big meal. Although the workers in the factory didn't know what to do, they were very enthusiastic and came to work one after another. Once again, Chen Guang was like a headless fly as he looked around the factory. He even ran to Hualing and Zhong Yu's laboratory to see the progress of their experiment. By noon, he still had no idea what to do. His head was in a mess. Sitting in the empty chairman's office with only an old computer left, Chen Guang desperately rubbed his temples. He hadn't had such a headache for a long time. It's not that he didn't think about hiring experts, but on second thought, even if he forced his way into the heavenly cup and became the strongest industrial wastewater pollution prevention and control master, it was still useless. How could he count on others? Why not invite David Copperfield over and have him magically remove the contaminants from the water? Forget it, he felt that it would be easier to make the people of the review team disappear. Or, he could use his supreme martial sage realm martial arts to blast all the contaminants in the pool into dregs. Forget it, no matter how powerful a martial artist was, he still had to abide by the law of conservation of matter. The contaminants were originally dissolved in water. What was the use of turning them into dregs? The supernatural ability of the Great Earth Explosion. Chen Guang immediately refuted himself. Although the Great Earth explosion could control soil and other Earth-based substances, the contaminants were all in the water and were in liquid form. He couldn't do that. Just as he was having a headache, someone knocked on the office door. Xiao Lu, who he had some impression of yesterday, stood at the door with an ugly expression. He looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. "What's wrong?" Chen Guang stood up and asked. Lu Tao looked at Chen Guang nervously. "Mr. Chen, Manager Gua told me not to disturb you." Chen Guang waved his hand. "What's the matter? Don't hide it. It's like this. The people from the Municipal Environmental Protection Bureau just came." Chen Guang was puzzled. "Isn't the review team coming next week? Why are they coming earlier?" Lu Tao turned his head and looked outside. "Mr. Chen, come with me. It seems that someone reported us." Deputy Bureau Chief Pang of the Municipal Public Security Bureau brought people to cause trouble again. Manager Gua is still dealing with them, but their attitude is very bad. They said that they want to fine again. Mr. Xia just paid the fine half a month ago. How can they come again so soon? This is too much. Chen Guang's face was gloomy as he followed Lu Tao to the reception conference room next door. Such a high frequency of fines is somewhat unreasonable. Lu Tao said as he walked, "I heard that those people who left the factory yesterday followed Chief Yang to the entrance of the Municipal Environmental Protection Bureau to put up a banner. He also found a group of people to follow behind and make a fuss. The leaders of the Municipal Public Security Bureau can't do anything about it. Aren't they afraid of the people making trouble these days? No wonder. It's inexplicable." Chen Guang quickened his pace. Just when he reached the door of the conference room, he heard voices coming from inside. "Manager Gua, please ask your new boss to come out." We all heard that he came to the factory yesterday. Chief Pang, Mr. Chen really went back. Why don't you come another day? We just fined him at the beginning of this month. How can he pay again now? Deputy Bureau Chief Pang snorted. "Manager Gua, do you think I'm blind? When I came in, I saw a Passat with an A license plate in the parking lot. Do you think it's Mr. Chen's?" Guoming didn't expect Deputy Bureau Chief Pang to look at it so carefully. He was momentarily speechless. "Well, Manager Gua, you can't be careless today. The people along the river blocked the entrance of our bureau again. We have to give them an explanation. The fine at the beginning of the month is at the beginning of the month. But now we are not talking about the last time. Look at these lists. They are the losses suffered by the people along the river over the years. Look at this fish farm. All the fish in the pond are dead. Tens of thousands of economic losses. You haven't even paid 1/3 of it. And look at this lotus pond. Look at the stinky water in the pond. Isn't it miserable?" When Manager Xia was in charge, he kept delaying this matter. "I heard that Mr. Chen is quite rich. Then you have to get rid of this matter quickly. You have to give them an explanation." Guoming panicked. "Chief Pang, stop joking. It's true that Mr. Chen is rich, but it doesn't come from nowhere. Besides, didn't we pay the compensation last year and the year before that? It's not 1/3 of it. This is not the figure on the previous bills." Deputy Bureau Chief Pang said, "Last year was last year. This year, the fish are dead again. Are you kidding me? Everyone knows that the water in Tongshan River cannot be used. I don't believe that these people will continue to raise the fish even though they know that it cannot be raised. The compensation was also the buyout price." Bang! Someone slammed the table. Deputy Bureau Chief Pang was furious. "Guoming, do you have any sense of social responsibility? What the hell is going on in your head?" Guoming was also furious. Whether I have any sense of responsibility or not is completely different from what Chief Pang said. Don't confuse us. We will bear the responsibility that should be borne by our factory. Don't put the blame on us if it's not our responsibility. Besides, it was Manager Xiao's factory that caused the losses to the farmers along the river. Manager Xia also had a good plan to deal with the aftermath. Now that Mr. Chen has just arrived, Chief Pang, you are bringing up the past again. This is not fair. You want to talk to me about the rules? Fine, I will talk to you about the rules too. I will say this now. The pollution your factory caused to Tongshan River is enough for you managers to go to jail for a few years. Your Mr. Chen is very rich, right? I will say this now. Since he is the boss of Tongshan Industrial Factory, he has to bear the responsibility. No matter how rich he is, he can't hide the truth. I will send the note now. All of you better wait for your jail time. Let's go. Deputy Chief Pang roared again. The next moment, the door in front of Qin Guang was flung open. A chubby middle-aged man with a square face walked out angrily. He looked up and saw Qin Guang. He did not take it seriously at first. He turned his face away and continued to walk forward. Guoming ran out from behind the door and saw Qin Guang. He subconsciously opened his mouth and said, Mr. Qin. Deputy Chief Pang took 2 steps forward and stopped. He looked back at Qin Guang. His eyes were puzzled at first, then he narrowed his eyes and looked at him carefully. His mouth gradually opened wide. Qin Guang. Obviously, this Deputy Chief Pang was very concerned about current affairs and news. He knew Qin Guang. Qin Guang nodded. That's me. You are Deputy Chief Pang, right? Guoming came up to him and looked embarrassed. Mr. Qin, why are you here? It's not a big deal. Qin Guang turned his head and looked at him. This is not a big deal. I spent 170 million to buy a factory, and I have to go to jail for breaking the law. This is not a big deal. Deputy Chief Pang, I'm a coward. Don't give me a heart attack. Deputy Chief Pang could tell that something was wrong with Qin Guang's tone and did not know what to say. He looked at Guoming and said, Manager Guo, why didn't you tell me earlier that Mr. Qin is Qin Guang? Guoming shrugged. I thought Chief Yang had told you. Deputy Chief Pang stomped his feet. Damn it. That Yang set me up. Qin Guang asked. What? Deputy Chief Pang broke out in cold sweat. Nothing. Nothing. As a deputy chief in the government, he knew a lot about the gossip in the government. Back then, when Qin Guang dealt with Su Lijing to establish his prestige, it could be considered as an earthquake in China's bureaucracy. Su Lijing, a deputy minister, was defeated by an undergraduate student and even died on the spot in court. The people in the government couldn't help but feel sorry for this kind of shocking news, so they paid more attention to it. As a result, a lot of gossip related to the conflict between Su Lijing and Qin Guang was talked about in their spare time. This kind of gossip, which was almost like an unofficial anecdote, was not particularly widespread. However, Tongshan City was adjacent to Wujing City, and Deputy Chief Pang liked to ask around, so he naturally heard the most about it. Deputy Chief Pang had heard a lot about Qin Guang's brief detention. Secretary Ma personally escorted him, and Wu Shan, the head of the Provincial Public Security, Procuratorate, and People's Court, personally escorted him. Later, with Qin Guang's meteoric rise, the Shanghai Financial Group gave him 1 billion yuan, which further proved that Qin Guang was definitely not a poor student with no background, but the second generation of the mysterious Of course, Chen Guang's own celebrity status and his personal achievements in various industries also raised his personal status in Deputy Chief Pang's heart. Recently, there was another piece of news. Their crew went to Baishui County of Kainan Province, which was far away from the government. When they returned, the entire Kainan Province was shaken, and Baishui County was even more tragic. The famous father and son of Tongyuan Real Estate committed suicide to escape punishment, and more than 100 people were arrested and sentenced. The Baishui case was broadcasted on CCTV for several days in a row, and it became a typical case. At that time, Deputy Chief Pang, who was very smart, completely matched the time of the news that the crew of women went to Baishui River to film. He would never believe that the two had nothing to do with each other. He knew that the new boss of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection was called Chen Guang, but he had never seen him in person. Like Guoming, he did not associate the two Chen Guangs together. Now he knew that this Chen Guang was the Chen Guang. Chapter 10:18. Deputy Commissioner Pang thought that his ruthless words must have been heard clearly. How could he not be so scared that his legs turned to jelly and his pants became wet? Even if I had 10,000 guts, I still wouldn't provoke him. Chen Guang still had a straight face. Then may I ask, Deputy Commissioner Pang, what do you mean by this? Really, don't scare me. I can't take threats. Cold sweat trickled down Deputy Director Pang's chubby face. He wiped his forehead and said, Boss. Boss Chen, I was just joking. You know, environmental protection is not easy now. We have to clean up our mess, and the people blame us for everything. We don't have much power, so it's hard to enforce environmental protection laws. Think about it, we are also environmentalists. We work hard to protect our motherland. Sometimes, when we deal with companies, if we don't act a little forcefully, they will pour black water into the river. Your factory is really... Sigh. Deputy Commissioner Pang was indeed a wily old fox who had been in the system for many years. Seeing that the situation was not good, he immediately tried to act pitiful. He had heard that Chen Guang had a sense of justice and had studied environmental protection in Gokyo University. Therefore, he tried to stir up sympathy by talking about the difficulties of environmentalists. Hearing those words, Chen Guang's face loosened up as he replied, I understand that. But according to what I know, the previous chairman of the Xiaoguang Environmental Protection Company had dealt with everything before he left. Even if the farmers along the river suffered losses, it's Chairman Xiao's problem. Now that this factory belongs to me, I'll let bygones be bygones. I had no choice but to do this because someone was causing trouble in front of the municipal bureau. I had to at least put on a show to appease them. Chen Guang grinned. Was it really just a show? No one promised you that they would share some benefits with you if they made money. Deputy Commissioner Pang shook his head violently, the fat on his face like streaky pork. No. Absolutely not. Even if there was, he could not admit it now. That's good. Go back to where you came from. Chen Guang waved his hand impatiently, wanting to drive this pretentious guy away. Deputy Commissioner Pang thought to himself, if I just leave like this, won't Boss Xia bear a grudge against me later? Impossible. I have to drag that young guy out to attract hatred. Chief Chen, here's the thing. Originally, I came here today to give those troublemakers an explanation. In the past, Chief Xiao lost everything. But think about it, the fish pond is indeed contracted by others every year. This year, they didn't throw in any fish seedlings, but they didn't produce any. It's just like the land. The land was destroyed. That's like taking drastic measures. So you want me to compensate you? Chen Guang's eyes widened. Deputy Commissioner Pang explained the situation to him. He also understood that the farmer's cause of trouble was valid, but he had already been wronged for buying the factory. Now that he had to pay compensation, he was even more unhappy. Furthermore, the Tongshan River extended down for many miles and there were many households along the river. If they were to lose a dozen people today, others might come to the rescue the next day. They could send thousands or even tens of thousands of people at once. No amount of money would be enough to compensate for the losses. Even Bill Gates could make it look like Bill Gates couldn't open the lid of the pot. He definitely couldn't do this easily, especially since it was obvious that Chief Engineer Yang had suffered a setback at his place yesterday and had come back to make trouble. Deputy Commissioner Pang shook his head. No. I'm not asking Chief Chen to compensate me. This is not your problem. Then what do you mean? Deputy Commissioner Pang rubbed his hands. It's like this. Look, those people are still blocking the entrance of the Municipal Public Security Bureau. When I went back to explain to them, they started arguing with me again. They didn't listen to me and even went around saying that we are colluding with the government and businessmen. It's mainly because of the emissions from the Tongshan industrial plant, and I'm the scapegoat. Why don't you go with me? Show me the facts and evidence. It'll be more effective if you go. Chen Guang nodded. All right then. Let's go. Chen Guang did not drive himself. Instead, he sat in Deputy Commissioner Pang's car. On the way, Deputy Commissioner Pang secretly sent a text message to his friend in the Municipal Public Security Bureau. Those farmers who followed Chief Engineer Yang to cause trouble could be considered reasonable, but Chief Engineer Yang, who was kicked out of the door and dragged himself into the water, had to be punished for leading a crowd to cause trouble. On the other side, Chief Engineer Yang was sitting with his legs crossed at the gate of the Municipal Environmental Protection Bureau with a group of people. Of course, it was he who told Deputy Director Pang that a super-rich new boss had come to Tongshan Industrial Factory. He thought that it wouldn't be a problem to ask for a few $100,000 as compensation for the people he had dragged out today. Once he got the money, he would first put it in his pocket. As for those real farmers, he would just give them $3,000 each. Just based on Chen Guang's behavior yesterday, Chief Engineer Yang felt that Chen Guang would rather have less trouble than more trouble, so he gave him the money without hesitation. Chief Engineer Yang had never expected that Deputy Commissioner Pang not only knew Chen Guang, but he also knew a lot of secrets that ordinary people did not know. He had almost peed his pants. He hated Chief Engineer Yang to death. Not long after, Chief Engineer Yang saw Deputy Commissioner Pang's car return, so he hurried over. However, he looked up and saw Chen Guang's livid face, then Deputy Commissioner Pang. Chief Engineer Yang, you're quite interesting. Chen Guang looked at this guy with a fake smile. Chen. Chief Chen, what do you mean? Chief Engineer Yang retreated step by step, thinking of how Chen Guang smashed the table with his palm yesterday, and he panicked. On the other side, a few hot-tempered farmers did not know what was going on. They wanted to rush forward noisily, shouting the slogan that Chief Engineer Yang had taught them. Pay up. Profiteer. That's right, scum. Pay up. Chen Guang knew that these people were incited, so he could not be bothered to argue with them. He just looked straight at Chief Engineer Yang. You're so bold. Chief Engineer Yang was afraid, so he hurriedly turned around and told the others to settle down first. Deputy Commissioner Pang stood up again and said the same thing as before. President Xia had already paid the compensation that should have been paid. Even if he had to pay new compensation this year, he would have to wait until the report was released at the end of the year to slowly assess the losses. You're gathering people to cause trouble, and that's against the law. As soon as Deputy Commissioner Pang finished speaking, the police car arrived, and a group of people got out and handcuffed Chief Engineer Yang. Chen Guang patted Deputy Commissioner Pang on the shoulder. Everything is done according to the rules. Then he turned around to look at Chief Engineer Yang. I never intended to make things difficult for you. If you had been more responsible yesterday, you would still be receiving your bonus at the factory. You're the one who betrayed us, so don't blame others for your evil intentions. When Chief Engineer Yang heard that, his body went limp and he slid to the ground. He did not expect Chen Guang and Deputy Commissioner Pang to be so ruthless. The moment Chief Engineer Yang was arrested, the others panicked, especially the farmers who were dragged over. They all betrayed Chief Engineer Yang on the spot. Well, there was no need for additional evidence. There were witnesses at the scene, and with the law enforcement video, it was a standard confession. Malicious incitement and gathering people to cause trouble. The facts were irrefutable, and Chief Engineer Yang could not deny it. After Chief Engineer Yang was taken away, the rest of the people felt relieved when they saw that they were not involved. However, they were not in a hurry to leave. They had finally met the person in question, and even if they did not dare to make a scene, they could still complain about their family situation and leave an impression. It would be good to have more compensation at the end of the year. Chen Guang wanted to go to the Tongshan River to take a look. He also wanted to know how much damage this unlucky factory had caused to Tongshan City. Therefore, he looked at the photos on the mobile phones of the farmers at the scene. He looked at the dead fish with their white bellies floating in the pond, the black rotten lotus roots that could be smelled through the screen, and the dried and yellow fruit trees along the river bank that did not bear fruit. He looked at the farmers' muddy eyes that were filled with poverty, and their skin that was cracked and yellow from working early in the morning. Coupled with their cowardly expressions and the shabby clothes on their bodies, Chen Guang felt miserable. It was really miserable. Although these things were not his fault, Chen Guang still felt heavy in his heart. Of course, they were easily bewitched by Chief Engineer Yang. After all, they were really miserable. All right. Everyone, don't crowd around Chief Chen. Chief Chen is very busy. Don't be in a hurry to complain to Chief Chen. At the end of the year, you should ask the people from the Tiansong Corporation for compensation. Deputy Chief Pang saw Chen Guang's solemn expression and thought that he was unhappy, so he quickly came over to help. Chen Guang silently covered his face. He could not remember how many times he had heard people sentence his Xia Guang environmental protection to death. His heart was stifled. I really have to thank you, Deputy Chief Pang. You've already put the blame on Tiansong in advance, huh? Should I thank you for saving me money? That's right. Then, Chief Chen, we'll be leaving first. Goodbye, Chief Chen. I'm going home. Sigh, I'll have to borrow money from the villagers for my child's tuition this year. What's there to borrow? Who has the money to lend you? I hope Tiansong can give more. Otherwise, we won't be able to live on. The rest of the farmers scattered like birds and beasts. Chen Guang turned to look at Deputy Chief Pang with a smile on his chubby face. Chief Chen, we've already spread the news that Tiansong wants to take over Tongshan Industry. I'm not afraid that you'll be angry, Chief Chen. Really, the people of Tongshan City are really looking forward to their arrival. If you still have time, Chief Chen, why don't you take a walk with me along the riverbank? It's really too bitter. Chen Guang raised his eyebrows. You're afraid that I'll use my connections to stop Tiansong from coming. Have you ever thought that if that's the case, my 170 million will all go down the drain? Chen Guang still kept a straight face as he stared at Deputy Chief Pang. Deputy Chief Pang pinched the fat on his face. Chief Chen, I'm not a good official. Look at my stomach, and you know that I like to eat and drink. But you don't know the situation in Tongshan River. Sigh. 8 years. A whole 8 years. I used to be able to swim naked in Tangshan River when I was young. Now, only crayfish can live in the water. I'm not afraid that you'll be angry. I sincerely hope that Tiansong will come. I'm really afraid that you'll stop this matter. If Xiaoguang Environmental Protection is still in charge, if Tangshan industry remains like this, it won't just be my problem in the future. It'll be the suffering of the millions of people in the city. Even if your money really goes down the drain, I really hope so. I became an official to make a living, but I really want to do something. These 8 years, the people of Tangshan City's Environmental Protection Department have been suffering too much. We feel terrible. Chapter 10-19. Deputy Director Pang looked like he was about to die a martyr's death, but the words that came out of his thick lips on his chubby face were filled with righteousness. If he wasn't a world-class acting master who could tell that this fatty wasn't acting and that he was speaking from the bottom of his heart, Chen Guang would have thought that he was deliberately lying to him. But now it seemed that even though this man had lost his edge in the system, and his hands weren't all that clean, he still had a sense of justice in his heart. Humans were always complicated, and there were rarely absolute good and evil people. Just like the corrupt official Heishin of the Qing dynasty. Even though he was extremely wealthy, in a TV series, Heishin was still able to tell Ji Xiaolan an analysis of the corrupt and honest officials that he spoke of. No one was perfect, and no one was perfect. Corrupt officials might be corrupt, but they could also be capable officials. If the water was too clear, there would be no fish. If all the corrupt officials in the world were strangled to death, and all the clean and honest officials were put in charge, order would still collapse, and the people would still suffer. Corrupt officials and capable officials weren't opposites, and they usually coexisted. At least this Deputy Commissioner Pang was a capable official who could be corrupt, but also wanted to do something practical. He knew that he would offend Chen Guang in this regard, but he still dared to speak the truth, and expressed his hope that Tiansong would take over the responsibility to save Tangshan River. This was enough to prove his courage. Of course, Deputy Commissioner Pang was indeed impressive, because he could grasp Chen Guang's preferences and personality from the many trivial things he had heard about Chen Guang. As long as his starting point was for the sake of the people of Tangshan City and the devastated Tangshan River, even if Chen Guang would be unhappy, he wouldn't really take revenge on him. Instead, he would admire him. Deputy Commissioner Pang had a good grasp of the situation. Deputy Commissioner Pang, I really have to look at you in a different light. You flatter me. But I really don't want my money to go down the drain like this. Deputy Commissioner Pang's face stiffened. So, President Chin, do you have any way to solve the current situation where the emissions are not up to standard? Chen Guang shook his head. No. Then, on behalf of the people of Tangshan City, I beg you, President Qin, to be merciful and let us live. Chen Guang didn't answer his question. He only said, let's take a look around first. In this way, Deputy Bureau Chief Pang took Chen Guang down the Tangshan River Basin for 2 days. They even looked at the river basins of Yuashan City. When Chen Guang returned to the hotel, it was already past 10 o'clock the next night. His mood was indescribably heavy. Along the way, if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he really couldn't imagine how much damage the Tangshan industrial factory had caused to this place. The river ecosystem had been completely destroyed. Several lakes along the way would erupt with cyanobacteria every July and August. The aquaculture industry of Tangshan City was almost completely destroyed. The most tragic were several villages that used to drink underground water along the river. The elderly who stayed behind suffered from various chronic diseases because of drinking water quality problems. There were even some children who were only a few years old who were disabled or deformed because of diseases they had when they were young. No matter how cold-hearted a person was, watching a 7 or 8-year-old child stretch out his deformed little hand that was only 3 to 4 inches long and as thin as 2 fingers to help his hunchbacked grandfather and grandmother clean up the dishes with difficulty, he would feel extremely sour in his heart. In recent years, because of the situation of the Tangshan industrial factory, the production of many enterprises in the industrial park had been greatly affected. At the most serious time, all of them had to stop production for rectification. However, the economy always had to develop. The industrial structure of the industrial park had been adjusted again and again. The pollution situation in the past 2 years had been much better than in the past. However, the most serious damage was caused in the first 2 years. At that time, the management was not as strict as it was now, and there were the most problems left. The teratogenicity and carcinogenicity had already occurred, and it was already irreversible. Chen Guang secretly clenched his fists when he remembered his original intention of choosing environmental science, a relatively unpopular subject, when he applied for university. Along the way, Deputy Commissioner Pang wiped his tears more than once. When Chen Guang looked at him, he awkwardly forced a smile and said, "I'm sorry to let you see such a joke, Mr. Chen. I've been to these villages many times in the past, and I always leave crying. Although the water supply in the villages is now widespread, some children can't go back because of their deformities." Before leaving, Chen Guang did not give Deputy Commissioner Pang a definite answer. Whether or not he could stop Tian Song, even if Deputy Commissioner Pang wanted to say something several times, but stopped himself. Chen Guang was very unwilling. He had never failed to do what he wanted to do. However, based on the current situation, it was obvious that letting the Tiansong Water Group take over was the best choice for everyone. He could use his connections to pressure Tiansong, and at least get some compensation to stop the losses. He did not need to invest more. With Tiansong Water's current strength, the entire Tangshan industrial plant should be able to handle at least 3 standards of discharge. However, Chen Guang felt that this was not what he wanted. Since he had seen these things, and he had personally participated in it, he wanted to use his own strength to do something for this place. However, donating money to help those victims would not solve the problem, and the area affected was too large. Even with his current net worth, it would be a drop in the bucket. He did not want to admit and accept failure, and he did not want Song Ningyuan to be proud. However, he could not let Tangshan industrial plant continue to harm this river because of his own selfishness. Ever since he became an adult, he had rarely been in such a torturous situation. Then what should I do? Chen Guang fell asleep in a daze. In his sleep, he saw the dirty, black, and smelly ditches with rotten mud floating on the surface and mosquitoes flying around. The old people and children with black spots on their faces and bent arms walked out of the dilapidated tile-roofed houses. The next morning, when he arrived at the company, he was greeted by a group of uninvited guests. The project manager of Tiansong Water had brought a team to scout ahead of time. At first, Chen Guang did not intend to pay attention to this group of people, nor did he let Guoming pay attention to them. He arranged for a low-level employee to take this group of people around the factory. The people from Tiansong are too disrespectful. After all, this factory is still our Xiaoguang Environmental Protection Company. What's the meaning of bringing a designer to take the measurements now? Guoming stood by the window of Chen Guang's office and looked down. Chen Guang shrugged. They're sure that we won't pass next week's inspection. But they can't be so arrogant. Guoming was very indignant. He used to work for Boss Xia, so he didn't feel like they were enemies. He took care of how much money he got. However, things were different now. The boss had changed to an old acquaintance, Chen Guang. Guoming couldn't help but feel indignant for Chen Guang. Chen Guang curled his lips. What can we do? Beat them up. If it had been the day before yesterday, he might have had this idea. At the very least, he would have blocked all the people from Tiansong at the door. However, after visiting the Tongshan River area the day before yesterday, Chen Guang himself was quite confused and wavering. Until now, he hadn't been able to make up his mind. He didn't want to admit defeat, so he had to use his connections to deceive everyone. If he wanted to live up to his conscience, he had to use funds from the Tianguang group, at least 300 million yuan to fill this hole. Coupled with the 170 million yuan that Lu Li had lost before, it meant that he would have to spend 500 million yuan to do this. Even if he passed the inspection smoothly and the rebuilt Tongshan industrial factory could meet the standards and continue to collect sewage fees for the remaining 12 years, it would be almost impossible to recover the cost. For him, it would be a complete failure if he couldn't make money. In a sense, from the moment he got involved in this matter, he had already lost. No matter how unwilling he was, he knew rationally that the best choice was to stop here, hand over the factory to Tiansong Water Group, and ask for some transfer fees. This was the optimal decision. The people from Tiansong Water Group were busy in the factory all day. At 4:00 in the afternoon, they still found Guoming. From the beginning, Chen Guang had been wearing a wide-brimmed hat and hiding in the crowd behind Guoming. He covered his face and pretended to be a young employee of the factory. Coupled with his casual attire that was rich with the smell of a student, he did look quite like one. "Manager Gua, why don't you take an early leave from tomorrow onwards? Isn't it a waste of time for you to stay here now? During the review next week, you can just go through the motions and put on an act, right?" Xiaoyu, the leader of the Tiansong Water Group, who was in charge of this matter, went straight to the point as soon as he entered the door. He was a little arrogant and proud. Guoming quietly turned his head to look at Chen Guang, who had lowered the brim of his hat, and squeezed out an ugly smile on his face. "Manager Xie, you must be joking. Our director Chen just said a few days ago that we have to stand up for the last shift." "Stand up for what last shift? It's already like this. There's not much to hope for that director Chen of yours. He's someone who could still buy Xia Guang at this time. If he says something you don't like, there's no other explanation other than that he has a screw loose in his head." Xiaoyu waved his hands rather impatiently, before raising his brows at the designers and engineering team behind him. Clearly, Xiaoyu knew that Xia Guang's new boss was surnamed Qin, but had not known that it was Chen Guang. The somewhat two-faced deputy director Pang probably hadn't warned him in advance. Hearing that Chen Guang was being scolded again, Guoming sneaked a look at Chen Guang. Still not seeing his expression, he began to worry for Xiaoyu's safety. "I hope you'll still be able to walk out later." A man with gold-rimmed spectacles who looked like an engineer walked out from behind Xiaoyu, spreading out a map in his hands and placing it on the desk. Manager Gua, it's actually like this. We've also taken into consideration the special circumstances of the Tongshan factory, and the tasks given to us by the higher-ups are also very tight. Once we take over, we'll have to come up with a rectification plan as soon as possible. As soon as we start work here, the enterprises in the industrial park will have to build their own water storage tanks, or they'll have to close down and reorganize. Our Tiansong factory will have to resume operations in 6 months at most, and meet the discharge standards. Chapter 10:20. Xiaoyu said again, "Yes, so we hope to start the transformation as soon as possible. Just one day earlier, you can get rid of this mess as soon as possible, and the people of Tongshan can get rid of the misery as soon as possible." The designer pointed to the drawings on the table and said, "This is the current floor plan of our Tongshan industrial factory. We have completed the design plan. The only pawns that can be used in this drawing are these stabilization pawns. We will transform them into accident pawns. Other ponds, such as grill tanks, UASB ponds, aerobic ponds, sedimentation ponds, and even sand filters, were not designed in accordance with the regulations. All of them have to be overturned and rebuilt. It's a lot of work. A dark-skinned, strong middle-aged man stood up next to him. He should be the manager of the site construction. He said, considering such a large amount of work and time is so tight, we hope to enter the site tomorrow and demolish some structures that can be demolished at present. Xiaoyu patted Guoming on the shoulder. Old Gua, I didn't mean anything by asking you to take a vacation. It's just that time is tight. Anyway, your new boss is not in charge. You have the final say here. Can you make an exception and we'll bring the excavator in tomorrow? Well, after going around in a big circle, Guoming and Qin Guang finally understood the intention of Tiansong sending manager Xia. There were still 4 days before the inspection. Even if the inspection couldn't be passed, it would probably take another 10 days or half a month for the two sides to complete the handover. But they couldn't wait to start the construction ahead of time. Anyway, everyone was sure that Xia Guanghuo would die. It didn't matter if he died early or late. In a sense, their thoughts were right. If it was still Boss Xia in charge, he probably wouldn't object, and Guoming wouldn't have any objections. But now that Qin Guang was sitting behind him, Guoming couldn't figure out what Qin Guang was thinking, so he couldn't express his opinion at will. Qin Guang finally got up. Guoming was a little relieved and turned to look at him eagerly. Anyway, he had the final say. Qin Guang took off his hat and looked up at Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu didn't notice the young man at first. He was shocked when he suddenly stood up while the adults were talking about business. Just as he was about to scold Qin Guang, he saw Guoming looking at Qin Guang respectfully and saying, "Mr. Qin, what do you think of this matter?" Xiaoyu immediately reacted, inwardly cursing Xia Guang for how black-bellied and sinister this new boss of his was. He had been here all along, but had actually been silently hiding by the side pretending to be an employee. Did I accidentally offend someone? Xiaoyu carefully looked at Qin Guang's face and smiled apologetically. Regardless of whether the other party was really stupid or not, he was still a tycoon who could fork out 170 million from his pocket to buy Summerlight environmental protection. It was best not to offend him easily. Wait, who is this person? Why did his face look so familiar? I seem to have seen it in the entertainment news before. You know me? Qin Guang asked first. Xiaoyu reacted quickly. Qin Guang. Qin Guang nodded. Yes, it's me. Xiaoyu suddenly came to a realization. No wonder he was so stupid. He was wasting money for nothing. In the end, he wasn't even in the industry. I say, as an internet celebrity, you should just properly be a celebrity. What's the point of coming to the environmental protection industry to pretend to be a capable person? The microorganisms and pollutants in the water can still give you face. Don't tell me they don't grow. An ignorant and incompetent celebrity like you doesn't know anything. See, you've made a fool of yourself, haven't you? Although he was secretly laughing in his heart, Xiaoyu did not show any disdain on his face. He just laughed it off. Director Qin, that. I didn't mean it that way just now. I was just thinking. Qin Guang first grinned, before his face hardened and he pointed outside the door. Scram! Ugh, Xiaoyu and the others had not expected Qin Guang to turn hostile just like that. He still wanted to struggle. Director Qin, look at this, Qin Guang snorted through his nose. You don't understand human language, do you? I have a screw loose in my head, so I have a bad temper. It wouldn't be good if I hurt you. What are you being so cocky for? The Tan construction manager was about to fly into a rage when Xiaoyu hurriedly stopped him. Qin Guang looked at him through Xiaoyu. Yo, you're not convinced. Your hands are itchy. Want to practice? Xia Yu hurriedly whispered into the guy's ear, behave yourself. Don't think that Chen Guang is tall. He's the champion of the international arm wrestling competition. He can paste you into the wall with one punch. The tanned middle-aged man immediately gave in. After much difficulty, the situation settled down. Xia Yu turned around and wanted to argue again, but Chen Guang glared at him. I'll say it one last time. Scram. Xia Yu saw that he could not come to an agreement, so he had no choice but to leave with his men. After everyone left, Guoming was still very angry. We haven't even finished yet, and they're already tearing down our wall. This is too much. Chen Guang sighed. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to be strong to forge iron. If we can't meet the standards, then we can't meet the standards. Who knows how that manager Xia will slander me when he gets out. D***it. Forget it, let's not think about this. Old Gua, I'm going out for a walk to get some fresh air. My heart is very stuffy. Chen Guang waved his hand, picked up his cup and drank some water. Then, he shook his head and walked out. Sitting on the edge of the aerobic pool, Chen Guang felt melancholy as he looked at the floating black mud and white foam. Smelling the strange rotting smell, Chen Guang felt melancholic in his heart. Sometimes, he really wished that he was a bad person. How bad could he be? So bad that he was completely unreasonable. Even if the emperor came, he would not give him face. So bad that he would not feel heartache when he saw a complete stranger living a miserable life. So bad that he would not lose out since he had spent the money. Even if he had to go against his conscience, he had to let the review team approve it. So bad that the drainage would still not meet the standards for another 12 years, and they would still collect sewage fees if they did not rectify it. With his current relationship with the elders, and the arrogance of the underlings in the Guangdong General Headquarters, if he really wanted to be unreasonable, no one would be able to do anything about it. But he could not do it. He was still a good person deep down. Polluting the environment was equivalent to poisoning others, and hundreds of thousands of people at once. If he really did that, he would be a ruthless butcher who had slaughtered more people than Bai Qi. Although the people from Tiansong were annoying, Songning Yuan was even more annoying. But it could not be denied that their people were really capable. Over the past few days, Chen Guang had looked through quite a bit of information regarding the Tiansong water utility. Putting aside Songning Yuan, who was the representative of the Song family, the reason why the Tiansong water utility could rise in the country in recent years was due to their standards. Tiansong water had solved many difficult and complicated diseases all over the country, from soil and water restoration to super difficult wastewater treatment, and so on. They worked closely with many universities both at home and abroad. They had a large team of more than 50 top experts, many of whom were well-known masters both at home and abroad. They were well-funded and had a strong technical background. They were fully deserving of being the leading enterprise in the country. Although they made a lot of money, they had also contributed a lot to promoting environmental protection. In addition, although Manager Xia was very arrogant and annoying today, he was not arrogant without any support. However, he wasn't being arrogant without any backing. Instead, he was being arrogant because he had the confidence and reason to do so. Since Xia Guang environmental protection could not be saved, there was nothing wrong with the early demolition. What annoyed Chen Guang the most was that he felt he had become the villain, the stumbling block in front of justice. It was just like what the fat Deputy Bureau Chief Pang had said the day before yesterday. Giving up himself was the only way to benefit the people. What kind of bad luck was this? Hey, business is not good, right? He was in a daze when he heard a clear and familiar voice behind him. He turned around and shouted in surprise, "Sister Lu Fei, why are you here?" Lu Fei ran to his side and sat down. She did not care that the floor was dirty. Speaking of which, it's a coincidence. Here, Dala chemical. Do you see it? Ha! I see it. Why? Lu Fei shrugged. You still don't know. Chen Guang suddenly understood. Your family. Lu Fei nodded. It's my family's, but my cousin is in charge of it. I didn't even know about this. I only found out about it when he came back to Wujing to have a chat with us yesterday. He told me about it as a joke. Chen Guang was stunned. But many people knew that Xia Guang's new boss was Chen Guang, but they were not sure that it was me, Chen Guang. How did you know it was me? Lu Fei chuckled and pointed at her head. Sixth sense. Have you forgotten? I told you before that I'm an intuitive businessman. Chen Guang sighed in admiration. You're awesome, my sister. Lu Fei patted his head again. Besides, no matter how many people are called Chen Guang in this world, who else but you can be so rich and so stupid? With this movement, Lu Fei's tight-fitting black leather clothes wrapped around her body, revealing every detail of her body. Chen Guang swallowed his saliva inwardly. After not seeing her for a long time, Sister Lu Fei's figure was still as hot as ever. Even though it was now late autumn and winter was fast approaching, she was no longer wearing those thin leather clothes of the past, but she still looked curvaceous in all the right places. Chen Guang could not be blamed for his lack of willpower. After all, his relationship with Lu Fei was not ordinary. What was the saying again? A merchant girl does not know the hatred of a fallen nation, but sings from across the river what flowers will follow. Not only did Lu Fei not feel uncomfortable with his seductive gaze, she instead puffed out her chest proudly before turning back to look at him. How is it? Do you like it? Chen Guang's throat rumbled repeatedly. I like it. Do you want to touch it? Yes. Here. Lu Fei patted his head again. Dream on. You were sitting here sighing all by yourself just now, looking like you've aged 10 years. Now you're thinking about all this nonsense again. Chen Guang drooped his head. Sigh, you're right. Sister Lu Fei, what do you think I should do? Lu Fei hugged her knees and turned to look at him. Don't worry, tell me slowly. Let's think of a solution together. It had to be said that Lu Fei came at the right time. In the past few days, Chen Guang was really full of bitterness and had no one to talk to. He had found the right person to tell Lu Fei about the troubles of the business world. Over there was the Lu family's Dalu chemical industry. Lu's chemical industry was a super-large chemical group in Duchuan province. As an entrepreneur over the years, Lu Fei had dealt with environmental-related issues. Lu Fei's sense of responsibility as an entrepreneur, her understanding and consideration of profit and environmental protection, and even her understanding of Tiansong water was much deeper than Chen Guang, who had entered the industry less than a week ago. Unknowingly, the two of them sat by the pool and talked until it was nearly 9:00 at night. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.